The scene is a familiar one, perhaps a reflection of a moment you yourself have known. An office, late at night, bathed in the cold, blue light of a computer screen. A figure sits in the silence, but their mind is a storm of noise. They are not working, they are staring into the middle distance, lost. Their breath is shallow, their shoulders are tight. In their mind, a conversation from this morning plays on a loop. Each word, each glance, dissected and re-examined. They feel the heat of embarrassment, the sting of regret, as if it were all happening again, right now. Then, like a sudden change of channel, the mind jumps forward. A presentation, a meeting, a confrontation looms in the week ahead. The heart rate quickens. A dozen negative outcomes parade through their awareness, each one feeling not just possible, but probable. This person is a prisoner, held captive in a cell whose bars are forged from yesterday and whose walls are built from the anxieties of tomorrow. They are everywhere, and yet they are nowhere. They are certainly not here, in the quiet solitude of the room, in the simple, physical reality of their own body. This state of being, this quiet desperation, is the unspoken epidemic of our modern world. We have built lives of incredible convenience and material abundance, yet we find ourselves more distracted, more anxious, and more disconnected than ever before. Our minds run on a relentless treadmill, chasing phantoms of the past and wrestling with shadows of the future. This constant, internal chatter becomes the soundtrack to our lives, a low-frequency hum of dissatisfaction that drains our energy, poisons our relationships, and robs us of the very life that is unfolding right in front of us. We have everything, and yet we feel an inescapable emptiness. We are lost in a labyrinth of our own making, yearning for an escape, for a moment of genuine peace. But what if there were a way to step off this treadmill? What if there were a path to quiet the ceaseless noise, not by escaping the world, but by turning inward to face it? What if the freedom we seek is not in a different place, a different job, or a different life, but in a different way of relating to our own mind? For thousands of years, an ancient stream of wisdom has meticulously mapped this inner landscape. It offers not a dogma to be believed, but a set of practical tools, a science of the mind designed to diagnose and heal the very roots of our human suffering. It is a path that gently guides us away from the prisons of past and future and leads us home to the only place where life ever truly exists. This is the path of awareness. This is the path of awakening, the profound and practical wisdom of Buddhism. To begin this journey inward, we must first become acquainted with the very landscape of our own minds. And for most of us, that landscape is not a serene, quiet garden. It is a wild, untamed river, a ceaseless current of thoughts, feelings, memories, images, and plans that flows from the moment we wake until the moment we fall into a restless sleep. This is the river of thought. It is the background noise of our entire existence, so constant that we often fail to notice it, much like a person who lives by the sea no longer hears the crashing of the waves. Yet, this river dictates the weather of our entire inner world. It carries us into rapids of anxiety, whirlpools of depression, and eddies of distraction, often without our consent or even our awareness. We are, for the most part, unwitting passengers on a journey without a map, tossed about by currents we do not understand. Buddhist philosophy has a wonderfully apt name for the master navigator of this river, the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey in a vast jungle, restless, agitated, and endlessly curious. It never stays still for more than a second. It swings from one brancher memory of something you said yesterday to another brancher, sudden worry about an unpaid bill. From there, it leaps to a snippet of a song you heard this morning, then scrambles to a fantasy about a future vacation, only to be distracted by a judgment about the person sitting next to you. It is a chaotic, almost frantic dance from one mental object to the next. This is not a sign of a broken or deficient mind. It is the mind's default setting, honed by millions of years of evolution that prized a mind which could constantly scan for threats, opportunities, and information. The problem is that this mechanism, once essential for survival in a physically dangerous world, is now often a source of chronic, self-inflicted stress in our psychologically complex one. The monkey mind is not your enemy, but its untamed nature is the source of a great deal of our inner turmoil. This great river of thought is fed primarily by two powerful tributaries, the past and the future. The mind has a powerful gravitational pull toward what has already happened. Part of this is a learning mechanism. We replay mistakes to ensure we don't repeat them. We revisit successes to replicate them. But in our modern context, this useful tool often becomes a cycle of rumination. We get stuck. We are no longer learning from the past. We are imprisoned by it. We relitigate old arguments in the courtroom of our minds, hoping for a different verdict that will never come. We endlessly edit the screenplay of our own history, replaying painful scenes, wishing we had said something different, done something else. This kind of thinking is seductive because it feels productive. It feels as though if we just think about it hard enough, we can somehow resolve the unresolvable. But the past is a cancelled check. It cannot be cashed again. To live in it is to try to nourish oneself on a picture of a meal. We also cling to the golden memories, the peaks of happiness, and in doing so, we create a painful contrast with a present that can never quite measure up. By constantly looking backward, we ensure that our feet are never firmly planted in the only ground that truly exists, the present moment. If the past is a prison of regret, the future is a fog of anxiety. The mind's other great talent is projection, the ability to simulate possibilities. This too was a survival advantage. To anticipate the predator, to plan for the winter, was to survive. But now, this future-oriented mind operates on overdrive. It creates endless what-if scenarios, and for some reason, its favorite screenplays are tragedies. What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if they don't like me? What if I fail? We live out 1,000 potential catastrophes in the theater of our minds, and our nervous system responds to each one as if it were a real and present danger. Our body is flooded with stress hormones. Our muscles tense. Our breathing becomes shallow in response to a fiction, a specter, a thought that has no substance. We suffer in imagination far more than we ever suffer in reality. This constant, low-grade anxiety, this state of perpetual anticipation for the next bad thing, is utterly exhausting. It prevents us from relaxing, from trusting, from simply being at ease in our own skin. We are living in a state of constant preparation for a life that may never arrive. And in doing so, we miss the life that is happening right now. Here we arrive at the absolute heart of the matter, the crucial insight that can begin to change everything. The problem is not the river of thought itself. The problem is not the monkey mind. The problem is not the existence of memories or the capacity to plan. The fundamental problem is our relationship to these things. The problem is identification. We do not believe we are observing the river. We believe we are the river. We are not just having thoughts. We are completely and utterly fused with them. When an anxious thought appears in the mind, we do not see it as an anxious thought has arisen. We experience it as I am anxious. When a self-critical thought appears, such as, I am not good enough, we do not recognize it as a transient piece of mental weather. We accept it as a fundamental truth of our being, as a core feature of our identity. This unconscious act of fusion, of identification, is the chain that binds us. It is what gives the thoughts their power over us. We are like a dreamer who does not know they are dreaming, and so believes the monsters are real. The peril is absolute. When people first become aware of this inner chaos, their first instinct is almost always to fight it. They try to stop thinking. They try to force their mind into a state of calm. They clench their mental fists and try to wrestle the monkey into submission. This is a noble effort, but it is doomed to fail, and in its failure, it creates even more suffering. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this perfectly. A student, frustrated by his turbulent mind, sought out a Zen master for guidance. The master led him to a small, serene lake, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The master then tossed a small pebble into the water, and the surface erupted in a series of expanding ripples. "Your mind is like this," the master said. "How would you make the water still again?" The student, eager to prove himself, immediately plunged his hands into the water, trying to press the ripples flat. But the more he splashed and pressed, the more chaotic and muddy the water became. Defeated, he pulled his hands out. The master simply smiled and motioned for him to sit and wait. They sat in silence, and slowly, gently, all on its own, the water settled. The mud sank to the bottom, the ripples subsided, and once again, the lake's surface became a perfect mirror. "Peace of mind is not something you can force," the master explained. "It is what happens when you stop struggling." This is the profound lesson. We cannot stop the river of thought through force, but we can learn to stop being swept away by it. We can learn to change our position. Instead of being the swimmer caught in the rapids, we can learn to become the calm, unwavering observer, sitting peacefully on the riverbank. This is the beginning of liberation. It is the practice of developing a new capacity, a new faculty of mind, that of the witness. The witness simply watches. It sees a memory of childhood float by like a leaf on the water. It notices a surge of anger pass like a dark cloud in the sky. It observes a plan for tomorrow drift by like a piece of wood. It sees all of this without judgment, without criticism, and crucially, without grabbing onto anything. It lets it all come, and it lets it all go. This is not a cold detachment. It is a warm, spacious, and compassionate awareness. It is the recognition that you are not the chaos. You are the stillness that holds the chaos. You are the sky, not the clouds. You are the riverbank, not the river. By cultivating this observer, this silent witness, we begin to create a space between our sense of self and the endless stream of mental content. In this space, freedom is born. In this space, we find we have a choice. We no longer have to believe every thought that our mind produces. We no longer have to be a slave to every emotional reaction. We have discovered a place of refuge, a sanctuary of calm, right in the midst of the storm. We have begun to tame the monkey mind, not by caging it, but by offering it a place to rest. We have learned to be with the rippling lake of our mind with so much patience and kindness that it begins, all on its own, to settle. We have now seen the nature of this great, restless river. We understand its powerful currents are forever pulling us toward the shores of yesterday and the shores of tomorrow. We have seen that our bondage comes not from the river itself, but from our mistaken identity with it. And we have glimpsed the possibility of a new way of being, that of the peaceful observer on the bank. To deepen this understanding and truly learn how to free ourselves, we must now examine the two great tributaries that feed this river with more care. Let us first turn our attention to the one that holds so many of us captive, the one that is heavy with the ghosts of what was. Let us venture into the murky, powerful waters of the past. Having recognized the restless river of our inner world, we now turn to face its most powerful and persistent tributary, the one that carves the deepest canyons in our psyche. This is the stream of the past. It flows through us not as water, but as memory, carrying the silt of old pains, the debris of regret, and the ghosts of former joys. We call this the weight of yesterday, and it is a burden that many of us carry without ever realizing we have the choice to set it down. The first and most liberating truth we must understand is this: the past does not exist. Not anymore. The event that caused you pain, the mistake you made, the moment of perfect happiness you longed for it, is all gone. It has vanished as completely as a sound that has faded or a footprint that has been washed away by the tide. The only place the past has any reality, any substance at all, is within the confines of your own mind. Right now, it persists only as a pattern of thought, a chemical echo, a story that you are telling yourself in this present moment. When we suffer over the past, we are not suffering from what happened back then. We are suffering from a memory that is alive and active now. This is a profound shift in perspective. It moves the problem from an unchangeable, external reality into the internal, malleable realm of our own mind. It means the chains that bind us to yesterday are not made of steel, but of thought. And what is made of thought can be unmade by wisdom. This weight of yesterday is a heavy and multifaceted thing. We often focus on the burden of painful memories, the sharp stones of regret and resentment that we carry in the sack upon our backs. Regret is a particularly cruel form of self-inflicted suffering. It is the mind's futile attempt to be a time machine, constantly traveling back to a closed-off scene to rewrite the script. We become our own harshest critic, a relentless prosecutor presenting the same evidence of our failures over and over. If only I had said this. If only I hadn't done that. Each if only is another turn of the knife in a wound that we refuse to let heal. This cycle feels strangely purposeful, as if our penance of mental anguish might somehow retroactively fix the unfixable. But it does not. It only ensures that the pain of a single past moment is multiplied 1,000 times over, bleeding into and poisoning countless present moments. Resentment is the other sharp stone. It is the anger and bitterness we hold towards those who have wronged us. We believe that by holding on to this anger, we are somehow punishing the other person, keeping their transgression alive. But in truth, resentment is a poison we drink ourselves, hoping that our enemy will die. The person who harmed you may be sleeping soundly, living their life, perhaps having forgotten the event entirely, while you lie awake at night, your body flooded with the stress hormones of anger, replaying their crime. In this way, you give them free rent in the most precious real estate you own, your own mind. You remain chained to them, allowing their past actions to continue to dictate your present emotive state. It is like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone in the end. You are the one who is most surely burned. Yet, the burden is not composed only of painful memories. In a more subtle and insidious way, even our most cherished, golden memories can become a weight. When we cling too tightly to the good old days, to a past peak of happiness or success, we create an idealized standard that the present can never match. We look at our current reality through a lens of nostalgia, and everything seems faded and disappointing in comparison. This attachment to past pleasure is a recipe for chronic dissatisfaction. It prevents us from seeing the unique gifts and opportunities of the here and now. We are like a person at a banquet who cannot enjoy the delicious food in front of them because they are lost in the memory of a spectacular meal they ate years ago. By clinging to the ghost of yesterday's feast, we starve in the present. Whether the memories are painful or pleasant, the act of clinging itself is the problem. It is the refusal to accept the flow of life, the insistence on anchoring ourselves in a river that has long since flowed downstream. There is a timeless Zen story that perfectly illuminates this human condition. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. Their journey took them to the bank of a raging river. A beautiful young woman stood there, her fine clothes indicating her wealth, looking distressed. She was afraid to cross the turbulent water for fear of ruining her silk robes and being swept away. The junior monk, a stickler for the rules, noted the situation and walked on, keeping a proper distance. Their monastic vows were strict and explicitly forbade them from touching a woman. The senior monk, however, paused, seeing the woman's genuine predicament. He walked over, and without a word, he lifted her into his arms, strode through the powerful current, and set her down gently on the far bank. She bowed curtly, without a word of thanks, and hurried on her way. The monks continued their journey. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The senior monk walked in comfortable silence, fully present with the journey, the feeling of the road beneath his feet, the sound of the birds. The junior monk, however, was a storm of inner turmoil. His mind was replaying the scene at the river, over and over. How could he do that? He fumed to himself. He broke our sacred vows. He touched a woman, and she wasn't even grateful. The disrespect. He walked in a fog of indignation, his heart heavy with judgment. The silence between them grew tense and thick. Finally, as evening approached, the junior monk could bear it no longer. He burst out, his voice trembling with pent-up frustration. "Master, I must ask you, how could you do that back at the river? You know we are forbidden to touch women, yet you picked one up and carried her in your arms." The senior monk stopped, turned to his young companion, and looked at him with eyes full of deep compassion. A gentle smile touched his lips. He spoke softly, without a trace of defensiveness. "Brother," he said, "I left that woman by the riverbank this morning. Why are you still carrying her? This story is a mirror held up to our own minds. Most of us are the junior monk. We carry people, conversations, insults, and mistakes with us for hours, days, years, even decades after the event has concluded. We are physically here, walking on our current path, but our minds are stuck back at the riverbank, endlessly litigating a moment that is over. We believe we are thinking about the event, but we are actually carrying its emotional weight, and it is exhausting." The senior monk represents the liberated mind. He was fully present at the river. He saw a need and responded with practical compassion. Unburdened by rigid rules, he acted, and then, crucially, he let it go. The moment was over, and his mind moved on with it. He put the woman down, both physically and mentally. His hands were empty. His mind was free. This brings us to the true meaning of letting go. It is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of spiritual practice. Letting go is not forgetting. You will not develop amnesia about your life's significant events. Letting go is not condoning. It does not mean you are saying that what happened was acceptable or that harmful behavior should be excused. And it is certainly not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, letting go is an act of profound strength, wisdom, and self-compassion. It is the conscious and courageous decision to no longer allow the past to have power over your present. It is the realization that your resentment does not harm the other person, it only harms you. It is the understanding that your regret does not change the past, it only ruins the now. Letting go is putting down the hot coal. It is putting down the heavy sack of stones. It is looking at the story of your past and saying, "This story does not define who I am today." It is, quite simply, leaving the woman by the riverbank. You do this not for her sake, but for your own, so that you can continue your journey with a light heart and a free mind. The weight of yesterday is a choice. The stories we tell ourselves about our past are habits of thought. And like any habit, they can be changed through awareness and practice. By recognizing that the past is nothing more than a present moment thought, we can begin to loosen its grip. We can learn to observe these memories as they arise, just as the senior monk observed the river, and choose not to be swept away. For as long as we remain chained to what was, we can never be fully alive to what is. But the past is only one of the great phantoms that haunt us. The river of thought has another powerful current, one that pulls us out of the present and into a world of illusion and fear. It is the trap not of what was, but of what might be. Let us now turn our gaze forward into the uncertain and often terrifying landscape of the future. Having navigated the treacherous currents of the past, we now turn our attention to the other direction in which the mind loves to flee from the present. We step out of the prison of yesterday's regrets and into the thick, disorienting fog of tomorrow's anxieties. This is the shadow of tomorrow, a vast and intimidating landscape of what-ifs and maybes that we project from our own mind. While the past burdens us with a weight that is heavy and solid, the future afflicts us with something more ethereal, but no less painful, a phantom dread. It is the suffering of things that have not happened, and in all likelihood, never will. To live under this shadow is to be perpetually off balance, bracing for a blow that never lands, and in the process, missing the solid ground of the life that is right under our feet. At its core, anxiety is the act of pre-suffering. It is the experience of emotional and physical pain in the present moment about a potential, imagined event in the future. Think about that for a moment. When you are anxious, you are allowing a fiction, a story your mind has created about a possible tomorrow, to cause you very real suffering today. Your heart races, your stomach churns, your mind spinsel in reaction to a ghost. It is like paying a huge amount of interest on a debt you haven't even taken out, and may never have to. It is an incredibly inefficient and painful way to live, yet it has become the default operating system for so many of us in a world that constantly demands we plan, predict, and prepare for what's next. It is here that we must make a crucial distinction, one that can bring immense clarity to our lives: the difference between wise planning and useless worrying. Planning is a skillful, present moment activity. When you plan, you are calmly and rationally assessing a situation, gathering information, and taking concrete steps now to influence a future outcome. If you have an important exam, wise planning involves creating a study schedule, organizing your notes, and setting aside time to learn the material. It is focused, constructive, and empowering. It gives you a sense of agency. Worrying, on the other hand, is an unskillful, future-oriented rumination. It is not focused on action, but on feeling. Using the same example, worrying would be to sit with your books closed, imagining the feeling of panic in the exam room, spinning stories like, what if I forget everything? What if the questions are too hard? What if I fail and my life is ruined? This mental activity accomplishes nothing productive. It is chaotic, draining, and disempowering. Planning is the architect drawing a blueprint. Worrying is the frightened child hiding under the bed, imagining monsters. The great tragedy is that we often mistake our worrying for planning, believing that by endlessly cycling through our fears, we are somehow preparing ourselves. In reality, we are only exhausting our mental and emotional resources, making us less prepared to handle whatever the future actually brings. The engine of this worry machine is a simple two-word phrase: what if? These two words have the power to hijack the most brilliant human faculty or imagination and turn it into a weapon against ourselves. Our mind is a magnificent storyteller. When we pose the question, what if? It immediately begins to write a script, build the sets, and cast the characters for a full-scale production. And because of our evolutionary negativity bias the tendency to pay more attention to potential threats, these productions are almost always horror movies. We see ourselves losing our job in vivid detail. We imagine the awkward silence after we say the wrong thing at a party. We feel the phantom pain of an illness we have diagnosed ourselves with. Each of these mental movies triggers a real physiological response. Our body does not know the difference between a vividly imagined threat and a real one, so it prepares for battle. The adrenaline flows, the cortisol rises, the muscles clench. We are living in a state of perpetual, low-grade fight or flight. Even when we are sitting safely on our own couch, we are fighting shadows. And the only casualty in that battle is our own peace of mind. There is a profound Taoist parable that speaks directly to this human tendency to project fear and certainty onto a future that is fundamentally unknowable. An old farmer lived in a small village. He was poor, and his most prized possession was a beautiful horse. One day, the horse ran away. All the neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck! This is a disaster." The old farmer simply listened and replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, and it was not alone. It had led a whole herd of magnificent wild horses back to the farm. The neighbors were overjoyed for him. "What incredible luck," they exclaimed. "You are a rich man now." The old farmer calmly replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's only son was trying to train one of the wild horses when he was thrown from its back and violently broke his leg. The neighbors came again, shaking their heads. "How awful," they said. "Your son, your only help, is now crippled. This is truly bad luck." The old farmer looked at his son's broken leg and replied, once again, "Maybe." A few weeks passed, and the emperor's army marched into the village. A terrible war had broken out, and they were forcibly conscripting every able-bodied young man. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only young man in the village to be spared. The neighbors, whose sons had been taken away, came to the farmer with tears in their eyes. "You were right," they said. "Your son's injury, it was the greatest fortune. Your luck is unbelievable." The farmer, looking out at the road where the soldiers had disappeared, said quietly, "Maybe." This story is a deep teaching on the nature of reality. The neighbors represent the ordinary, anxious mind. They rush to label every event as either good or bad, a blessing or a curse. They believe they understand the implications of what is happening. The farmer represents the wise mind. His response, "Maybe," is not one of ignorance or indifference. It is an expression of profound humility and wisdom. He understands that life is a vast, interconnected web of causes and conditions, and that it is impossible to know the ultimate outcome of any single event. He refuses to be thrown into emotional highs or lows by circumstances, because he knows he is only seeing a tiny fragment of a much larger picture. He rests in the uncertainty. This wisdom is the perfect antidote to anxiety. The anxious mind demands certainty. It wants to know the future so it can control it. The farmer's wisdom teaches us to let go of this demand, to accept the unknowable nature of tomorrow, and to find our stability not in prediction, but in presence. So what is the alternative to living under the shadow of tomorrow? It is to realize that the only point of power you will ever have is right now. You cannot act tomorrow. You cannot act yesterday. You can only think, speak, and act in this present moment. True preparation for the future, therefore, is not to be lost in worry about it. True preparation is to be as fully, consciously, and skillfully present as you can be now. By tending to the present moment with care, you are planting the best possible seeds for whatever future may grow. By being calm and clear now, you are better equipped to handle any challenge that arises. By being kind and compassionate now, you are creating a world around you that is more likely to be kind and compassionate in return. The future is built not by worrying about it, but by living the present moment that is its foundation. With all the wisdom and attention you can muster, we have now journeyed through the two great realms of illusion that keep us from our lives. We have seen the prison of the past, with its heavy bars of regret and resentment, and we have walked through the fog of the future with its phantom shapes of anxiety and fear. We see how our minds, like untrained horses, pull us violently from one to the other, dragging us away from the only place of peace and reality, the here and now. We have explored the symptoms of our collective dis-ease. We have felt the weight and seen the shadows. The next logical step on this path of healing is to move from a description of the symptoms to a formal diagnosis, to understand the problem with the clarity and precision of the great physician of the mind, the Buddha himself. This brings us to the very cornerstone of his teaching, the first of the Four Noble Truths, a stark, honest, and ultimately liberating look at the fundamental nature of our experience. Having journeyed through the phantom landscapes of the past and future, and having seen how our minds are constantly pulled away from the present, we arrive at a critical juncture. We have observed the symptoms of our inner dis-ease, the restlessness, the regret, the anxiety. Now, we must move from observation to diagnosis. To do this, we turn to the figure of the Buddha, not as a god to be worshipped, but as a master physician of the human mind. He was a spiritual scientist who approached the problem of human dissatisfaction with unparalleled clarity and precision. Like any great doctor, his method was logical and systematic. First, diagnose the illness. Second, identify its cause. Third, determine if a cure is possible. And fourth, prescribe the path to that cure. We begin with his profound and unflinching diagnosis of the human condition, the first of his Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is often translated from the original Pali language as life is suffering. On its surface, this statement can sound grim, pessimistic, even nihilistic. It seems to negate all the joy, love, and beauty that we experience. This, however, is a profound misunderstanding born from the limitations of translation. The Pali word is dukkha, and it carries a meaning far more subtle and comprehensive than the English word suffering. While dukkha certainly includes the obvious forms of pain we all know, physical illness, grief, despair, it points to something much deeper. A more accurate translation might be unsatisfactoriness, dis-ease, stress, or a pervasive sense of incompleteness. Dukkha is the subtle but constant friction we experience in our lives. It is the feeling that something is always slightly off-kilter, that things are not quite right. It is the background hum of anxiety, the restlessness that keeps us seeking the next distraction, the next purchase, the next experience, in the hope that it will finally make us feel whole and at peace. To state the first noble truth is to courageously acknowledge there is dukkha in our lives. This is not a judgment. It is a simple, factual observation, the necessary starting point for any authentic spiritual journey. It is the doctor looking at the patient with compassion and saying, "I see that you are unwell. Now, let us begin the work of healing." To fully grasp this diagnosis, the Buddha broke dukkha down into three distinct, though overlapping categories. The first is the most obvious, dukkha, dukkha, or the suffering of suffering. This is the raw, undeniable pain of existence. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes. It is the sharp grief that comes with the loss of a loved one. It is the sting of a harsh criticism, the anxiety of a financial crisis, the despair of depression. It is old age, sickness, and death. This is the form of dukkha that no one can deny. It is the overt pain and hardship that are an unavoidable part of the human experience, and we all instinctively seek to move away from it. The second category is more subtle and psychologically profound. Viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This form of dukkha arises from the fact that everything is impermanent, especially our moments of happiness. Even our most joyful experiences are tinged with the subtle anxiety that they will not last. Think of a perfect, sun-drenched vacation. As you sit on the beach, a part of your mind is already aware that in a few days you will have to return to work and routine. This awareness, this clinging to the pleasant moment and fearing its inevitable end, is itself a form of suffering. The joy is fragile, and its fragility causes a subtle tension. A new relationship brings elation, but also the seed of fear that it might one day end. The pleasure of a delicious meal is fleeting. We get the promotion we've always wanted, and for a short time we are happy, but soon the novelty wears off, and we are looking for the next thing. This is the hedonic treadmill we have already spoken of. The very nature of pleasure is that it is temporary, and our attachment to it, our futile attempt to make it permanent in a world where nothing is a primary source of our dissatisfaction. The third and most subtle category is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of being a self. It is the inherent stress and friction of being a complex, vulnerable organism in a constantly changing world. It is the existential anxiety that comes from having a sense of I that needs to be protected, defended, and maintained. It's the subtle effort involved in just being. Imagine a finely tuned car engine that is always idling, never completely switched off. Even when it's parked, there is a constant, low-level vibration. Sankhara dukkha is like that vibration. It is the baseline dis-ease that exists even in the absence of overt pain or the loss of pleasure. It's the fundamental vulnerability of our existence, the fact that we are a collection of constantly changing physical and mental processes anchoras that we mistake for a solid, permanent self. This fundamental friction, this basic insecurity of our conditioned state, is the deepest and most pervasive form of dukkha. To look at life in this way, to acknowledge these three forms of dukkha, requires immense courage. It means taking off the rose-colored glasses and seeing our experience for what it is. But again, this is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of radical realism, and within that realism lies the seed of immense hope. To give something a name is to take away its terrifying, amorphous power. As long as our dissatisfaction is a nameless, vague malaise, we are helpless against it. But once the physician has given it a precise diagnosis, dukkha in its three forms, we can begin to investigate it, understand it, and ultimately find a remedy for it. The Buddha's approach was always ruthlessly practical. He was not interested in philosophical speculation that did not directly lead to the alleviation of suffering. This is beautifully illustrated by the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man is shot by an arrow dipped in a deadly poison. His friends and family rush to his side and call for a surgeon to remove it. But the wounded man holds up a hand and says, "Wait, before you pull out this arrow, I insist on knowing the answers to several questions. Who was the man who shot me? To what caste or family does he belong? Was he tall or short, dark or fair? From which village did he come? What kind of bow did he use? What was the bowstring made of? What kind of wood was the arrow shaft made from? What type of feathers were used for its fletching?" The Buddha pointed out the obvious. The man would die from the poison long before he ever got the answers to his question. The immediate, urgent task was not to conduct a forensic investigation of the arrow, but to pull it out and treat the wound. In the same way, people would often come to the Buddha and ask metaphysical questions. Is the universe eternal or not? Is the self the same as the body or different? Does an enlightened person exist after death? The Buddha called these a thicket of views and often remained silent, because delving into them did not lead to the end of suffering. His focus was always on the poisoned arrow of dukkha. He declared, "Both now and in the past, I teach only this, dukkha and the cessation of dukkha." His teaching was not a philosophy to be debated, but a practical guide for removing the arrow. So here we stand. The great physician has offered his diagnosis. He has held up a mirror to our condition and named the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our lives, dukkha. We have examined it in its gross and subtle forms. We have accepted, with the courage of the man with the arrow, that our priority is not to question the diagnosis, but to seek the cure. We have taken the first, most difficult step, admitting the reality of our condition. Now, the diagnosis having been made, the next urgent and logical question arises. The question that drives any medical investigation forward: what is the cause? What is the nature of the poison on the arrow's tip? This question leads us directly to the second noble truth, the origin and root cause of all our suffering. Having received the great physician's diagnosis, the stark but honest truth of dukkha, we are not left in despair. For a diagnosis, no matter how serious, is an invitation to seek a cause. This is the second, and perhaps most radical, step in the Buddha's analysis of our condition. The second noble truth addresses the origin of dukkha, and its conclusion is both challenging and profoundly empowering. It states that the root cause of our suffering, our pervasive unsatisfactoriness, is not to be found in the external world. It is not our boss, our partner, our financial situation, or bad luck. The ultimate cause of our suffering arises from within our own minds. This can be a difficult truth to accept, as it dismantles our favorite habit of blaming our unhappiness on outside forces. But in this shift of responsibility from the external to the internal lies the key to our liberation. If the cause is within us, then so is the solution. The Pali word for this cause is tanha. This is often translated as desire or craving, but its literal meaning is more visceral: thirst. It is a deep, instinctual, and relentless thirst that drives us. It is not a gentle preference, but a compulsive urge that is never truly quenched. The Buddha identified three distinct channels through which this thirst flows. First, there is the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the endless wanting of things that gratify our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. It is the craving for the next delicious meal, the latest piece of technology, the perfect song, the praise of our peers, the comfort of a luxurious sofa. It is the engine of consumer culture, a constant chase for the next pleasant sensation, each one promising lasting happiness, but delivering only fleeting satisfaction, leaving us thirsty for more. Second, there is the thirst for existence, or the thirst to become. This is a deeper, more ego-driven craving. It is the desire for our lives and our very selves to be different. It is the thirst to be more successful, more attractive, more intelligent, more respected, or even more spiritual. It is the relentless inner voice that says, if only I could achieve this, or acquire that, or become that person, then I would finally be happy. This thirst fuels our ambition and our striving, but it is also the root of our envy, our jealousy, and our perpetual sense of inadequacy. We are constantly trying to construct a version of ourselves that we believe will be immune to suffering, a project that is doomed to fail because it is based on a future that never arrives. Third, there is the thirst for non-existence, or the thirst to get rid of. This is the other side of the coin of craving. It is our deep-seated aversion to unpleasant experiences. It is the urgent desire to push away pain, to escape boredom, to numb anxiety, to destroy anything that threatens our comfort and security. This is the energy of "I can't stand this." It manifests as anger, irritation, fear, and avoidance. We spend an enormous amount of mental energy resisting reality, trying to build a fortress around ourselves to keep out everything we deem unpleasant. This constant pushing away, this battle against what is an exhausting and futile struggle that is a major source of our inner turmoil. This driving thirst of tanha grows from a soil nourished by what Buddhism calls the three poisons. These three, greed, aversion, and ignorance, here considered the primary afflictions of the mind. Greed, or lobha, is the principle of pulling towards, of wanting more. It is the insatiable hunger we have already described, the addiction to pleasure and possession. Its nature is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. It only intensifies the craving. Aversion, or dosa, is the principle of pushing away. It is the energy of hatred, anger, frustration, and judgment. It is any thought or feeling that says no to reality. It seeks to destroy or escape what it finds unpleasant. These two poisons, greed and aversion, are the opposing forces that create the endless push and pull of our inner lives, the constant swinging between I want and I don't want. But these two poisons grow from the soil of a third, more fundamental poison, ignorance, or moha. This is not ignorance in the sense of being uneducated or unintelligent. It is a profound spiritual blindness, a fundamental misperception of the nature of reality. It is the delusion that we are a solid, permanent, separate self, living in a world of other solid, permanent, separate things. It is the failure to see that everything, including ourselves, is in a constant state of flux. It is the ignorance of the truth of dukkha itself. Because we are operating under this fundamental delusion, we believe that we can find lasting happiness by acquiring pleasant things, greed, and avoiding unpleasant things, aversion. This core ignorance is what makes our entire strategy for finding happiness so tragically flawed. We are like someone trying to build a permanent sandcastle on the edge of a tide that is relentlessly coming in. This brings us to a point of exquisite and vital subtlety. The Buddha's teaching is not a puritanical rejection of pleasure. The problem is not the beautiful sunset, the delicious meal, or the feeling of love. The problem is not the experience itself. The problem is the clinging. It is the quality of our wanting, the desperate, thirsty grasping that turns a joyful experience into a source of suffering. Imagine you are holding a single, beautiful rose. You can hold it gently in your open palm. You can appreciate its color, its texture, its fragrance. You are fully present with the experience, enjoying it without needing it to be more than what it is. This is enjoyment without clinging. Now imagine that you become terrified of losing the rose. You clench your fist around it, trying to possess it, trying to prevent it from ever wilting or being taken away. In the very act of grasping, you crush the delicate petals and destroy the beauty you were so desperate to preserve. The rose is the same. The difference is in the quality of your holding. The suffering comes from the clenching, not from the rose. There is another powerful image for this. Trying to hold water in your hands. If you cup your hands gently and loosely, you can hold a small pool of water. You can experience its coolness and clarity. But if you try to possess it, if you clench your fists tight to stop it from escaping, it instantly slips through your fingers and you are left with nothing. Our desperate grasping for happiness, our clinging to pleasure and pushing away of pain, is precisely what ensures that true, lasting peace slips through our fingers. We are so busy trying to control life that we never actually get to experience it. This second noble truth, then, is the ultimate game changer. It takes the problem of suffering out of the hands of fate, God, or other people and places it squarely in our own. At first, this feels like a heavy burden, but with reflection, it becomes the most liberating news in the world. If we are the source of our own dukkha through our own habits of craving, clinging, and resisting, then it means we are not helpless. It means we don't have to change the entire world to be happy. We don't need to get a new job, a new partner, or a new life. We only need to change the habits of our own minds. We can learn to unclench the fist. We can learn to hold our experiences with a gentle, open palm. We can learn to stop feeding the poisons of greed and aversion. The power is within us. We have now seen the great physician's diagnosis, dukkha, and his identification of the cause, tanha. We understand that it is our internal reaction to life, our thirst and our clinging, that generates our suffering. But this raises a deeper question. Why is this strategy of clinging and resisting so fundamentally doomed to fail? What is it about the very nature of life, the world, and ourselves that makes this approach so painful and ineffective? To answer this, we must look at the world without our usual filters of denial and delusion. We must confront one of the most basic, undeniable, and challenging laws of existence, a truth that, once understood, makes the wisdom of letting go self-evident. This next step on our journey is the exploration of the profound truth of impermanence. Having diagnosed our illness as dukkha and identified its cause as tanha's relentless thirst and clinging of our mind sway, must now ask a more fundamental question. Why is our strategy of clinging and resisting so utterly ineffective? Why does our desperate grasp for security and happiness always leave us with empty hands and an aching heart? The answer lies in a universal law, a truth so profound and pervasive that we see it in every aspect of our lives, yet so challenging that we spend most of our energy denying it. This is the truth of impermanence, or anicca in the ancient Pali language. It is the recognition that the entire universe, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, is in a constant, unstoppable state of flow. Anicca is not a philosophical concept to be debated or a religious dogma to be believed. It is an observable fact of existence, as real and inescapable as gravity. To see it, you need only to look. Look at the world around you. The mountains, which seem so solid and eternal, are slowly being worn down by wind and rain. Rivers change their course over time. The seasons turn in an endless cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death. The car you drive will one day rust and fall apart. The clothes you wear will fade and tear. The very home you live in is in a slow state of decline. Nothing, absolutely nothing, made of component parts can escape this law. Now, bring this observation closer to home. Look at your relationships. People enter your life, and people leave it. Friendships evolve, strengthen, or sometimes fade away. The dynamics within a family shift and change over the years. The passionate love of a new romance transforms into the quieter companionship of a long-term partnership. No relationship is static. It is a living, changing process. Now, look at your own body. It is the most intimate proof of impermanence you have. From the moment you were born, you have been in a process of constant change. Cells are dying and being replaced by the million every second. The face you see in the mirror today is not the exact same face you saw yesterday, and it is certainly not the one you will see in 20 years. Your body is not a solid object. It is a river of biological processes, flowing relentlessly from birth toward death. We try to fight this with diets, exercise, and cosmetics, but we can only slow the process, never halt it. The river always wins. Finally, and most importantly, look at the nature of your own mind. Is there anything more transient than a thought? A thought arises, catches your attention for a moment, and then vanishes, replaced by another. Feelings are the same. A wave of happiness washes over you, and it feels wonderful, but it inevitably recedes. A storm of anger or sadness gathers, and it feels all-consuming, but it, too, eventually passes. Your moods, your opinions, your ideas all are in a state of constant flux. Your mind is not a fixed entity. It is a weather system of ever-changing phenomena. Here, we discover the precise mechanism of our suffering. Dukkha is the friction generated when our strategy of clinging, tanha, collides with the reality of impermanence, anicca. We demand permanence from a universe that offers only change. We try to build a permanent, solid house of security and happiness, but the very ground on which we build it is a flowing, melting glacier. We cling to a pleasant feeling, refusing to accept that it must pass. We resist a painful feeling, demanding that it go away immediately, refusing to accept its presence. We are in a perpetual argument with reality, a futile battle against the fundamental nature of existence. And this argument, this resistance, is what exhausts us. It is the source of our anxiety, our stress, and our deep-seated dissatisfaction. We suffer not because things change, but because we expect them not to. The great Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah, taught this wisdom with a simple and beautiful story about his favorite cup. He had a glass that he was particularly fond of, and he would use it every day. He would often hold it up for his students and say, "You see this cup? I love this cup. It holds my water. It has a pleasing shape. It serves me well. But for me, in my mind, this cup is already broken." He was not being morbid. He was practicing wisdom. He continued, "I know that its nature is to break. I enjoy it, I use it, I drink from it, and I take care of it. But I have already accepted that one day it will be smashed to pieces on the floor. So when the day comes, and I hear it shatter, I will simply say, 'Of course.' Most of us live the opposite way. We buy a cup, we become attached to it, and we live with the unspoken assumption that it will last forever. When it inevitably breaks, we are shocked and upset. Oh no, my favorite cup is broken. Our suffering comes from the shock, from our resistance to the reality of what happened. Our pain is born from our failed expectation of permanence. Ajahn Chah, by living in alignment with the truth of impermanence, was free from this suffering. His peace did not come from having an unbreakable cup, but from fully accepting the cup's breakable nature. He was free to love and use the cup fully in the present, without the background anxiety of its potential loss. Once we begin to truly understand this, we see that the truth of impermanence is not a depressing or nihilistic idea. It is profoundly liberating. It is, in fact, the key to unlocking a deeper sense of joy and peace. When you know that every moment is fleeting, the present moment becomes infinitely precious. You stop taking things for granted. You listen more attentively to your loved ones, knowing that this conversation will never happen in exactly the same way again. You savor your food more deeply, knowing that the taste is temporary. You look at a sunset with more awe, knowing that it is a unique and unrepeatable display. Impermanence infuses life with a poignancy and beauty that we miss when we are lost in the illusion of permanence. Furthermore, this law contains within it the greatest solace for our times of pain. Just as our happy moments must pass, so too must our moments of difficulty. This is the wisdom behind the ancient adage, "This too shall pass." When you are in the depths of grief, the grip of anxiety, or the throes of physical pain, the understanding of anicca is a lifeline. It is the deep, unwavering knowledge that this state is not your final destination. The storm will pass. The dark clouds will part. The pain will subside. This truth does not magically erase the pain, but it changes your relationship to it. It gives you the strength to endure, to be with your suffering without being completely consumed by it, because you know it is just a visitor, not a permanent resident. We have now seen how the law of anicca governs everything in the world around us and the ceaseless flow of our own minds. We have seen how our suffering is a direct result of our resistance to this universal flow. Understanding this is a monumental step toward peace. It teaches us the wisdom of letting go, of holding our lives with an open, gentle hand, rather than a clenched fist. We have applied this lens of impermanence to the external world and to our internal states. But what about the one who is doing the observing? What about the I at the center of this experience, the one who feels, thinks, and perceives? Is this self the one solid rock in the river of change? Or is it, too, part of the flow? To ask this question is to stand at the doorway of the Buddha's most challenging, subtle, and ultimately freeing teaching. It is the investigation into the nature of what we call a self, having embraced the universal law of impermanence, seeing how everything from the stars in the sky to the thoughts in our mind is in a state of constant flow. We are led to an inevitable and deeply personal question. We have seen that our bodies change, our feelings change, and our world changes. But what about the observer? What about the I that sits behind our eyes, the one who witnesses this change? Surely, this self, this core of our being, is the one permanent fixture in a transient universe. It is this final and most cherished illusion that we must now investigate with gentle but unflinching honesty. This investigation leads us to the Buddha's most profound, challenging, and ultimately liberating teaching, the truth of anatta, or no self. From our earliest moments, we develop a powerful and intuitive sense of being a self. We feel like a consistent entity, a thinker of our thoughts, a feeler of our feelings. There seems to be a little person inside our head, a CEO in the headquarters of our mind, who has been with us since childhood and will be with us until death. We call this I, me, or myself, and we spend the vast majority of our lives protecting, promoting, and defending it. This belief in a solid, separate, and permanent self is the bedrock of our ordinary experience, and it is the central pillar supporting the entire structure of our suffering. The Buddha, as a spiritual scientist, did not ask us to simply believe that this self was an illusion. He invited us to look for it. He broke down our entire lived experience into 5 fundamental categories, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas, and encouraged us to see if we could locate a permanent self in any of them. First, there is the aggregate of former physical body. Is this body the real you? We have already seen that it is a process of constant change. It gets sick, it ages, it is dependent on food, water, and air. The cells that compose it are constantly dying and being reborn. It is clearly impermanent, so it cannot be a permanent self. Second, there is the aggregate of feeling. This refers to our capacity to experience things as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Are your feelings the real you? This is even more obviously transient. One moment you feel happy, the next sad, the next bored. Feelings are like weather patterns, constantly shifting and changing. They are far too unstable to be the basis of a continuous self. Third, we have perception. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels our experience. It sees a shape and color and says, "That is a blue car." It feels a sensation and says, "That is sadness." Are these perceptions the real you? Our perceptions are deeply conditioned by our past experiences, our culture, our language, and our mood. Two people can look at the same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perceptions are unreliable, subjective, and in constant flux. They cannot be a stable self. Fourth is the aggregate of mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all of our thoughts, intentions, opinions, biases, habits, and volitional actions. This is the chattering monkey mind. Is this cacophony of mental activity the real you? We have seen that this is perhaps the most chaotic and impermanent aspect of our experience. A thought is here 1 second and gone the next. To identify with our thoughts is to build our house on a whirlwind. Finally, there is consciousness. This is the fundamental capacity of awareness itself. the light that illuminates all the other experiences. One might think, aha, this must be the real me, the pure awareness. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness does not exist on its own. It is always consciousness of something. There is seeing consciousness, which depends on an eye and a visible form. There is hearing consciousness, which depends on an ear and a sound. Consciousness arises and ceases from moment to moment, dependent on conditions. It is not a monolithic, independent entity. It, too, is part of the flow. After this exhaustive investigation, after taking apart the entire machine of our experience, we are left with a startling conclusion. We cannot find a separate, solid, permanent self anywhere. The self that we feel so strongly is not a thing, but a process. It is an emergent property that arises from the complex interplay of these 5 changing aggregates, much like a beautiful melody arises from a sequence of individual musical notes. The melody is real, you can hear it, but it has no independent existence apart from the notes that compose it. In the same way, the self is a real experience, but it has no solid existence apart from the ever-changing processes of body and mind. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are a process of selfing. This can be a difficult idea to grasp, and it is crucial to understand what anatta is not. It is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not a nihilistic denial of life. Actions still have consequences. There is a continuity from one moment to the next. The person who woke up in your bed this morning is connected to the person who went to sleep there last night. The point of anatta is not that you don't exist, but that you don't exist in the way you think you do. You are not a separate, isolated island. You are a wave in the great ocean of existence, distinct for a moment, but never separate from the water. There is a wonderful Taoist parable that illustrates the profound, practical implications of this wisdom. Imagine you are resting in a small boat on a calm, misty lake. Suddenly, another boat collides with yours, jolting you from your peace. Your first reaction is irritation. You look up, ready to shout at the careless person who hit you, but you see that the other boat is empty. It simply came loose from its moorings and was carried by the current. What happens to your anger? It vanishes instantly. There is no one to blame. You might feel a fleeting moment of annoyance at the situation, but the personal, venomous anger has no target. You simply push the empty boat away and return to your rest. Now, imagine the exact same scenario, the same bump, but this time, when you look up, you see a man in the other boat. Immediately, your mind constructs a story. What's wrong with you? Watch where you're going. Are you blind? Your heart pounds, your face gets hot, and you are filled with a sense of righteous indignation. The external event, the bump, was identical in both cases. Your suffering, the anger, the stress, the story, was not caused by the bump. It was caused entirely by your perception that there was a solid someone in the other boat who had done this to a solid you. Anatta invites us to see that, in a profound sense, all boats are empty. The actions of other people are not born from a solid, independent self, but are the result of countless causes and conditions: their upbringing, their education, their current mood, their past traumas, their own ignorance and pain, all flowing together like a boat adrift on the currents of causality. When we see this, it becomes incredibly difficult to take things personally. Compassion naturally arises. Where once there was anger, the liberation of anatta is immense. When we loosen our grip on the idea of a fixed self, we have so much less to defend. An insult is no longer a personal attack on the core of our being. It is just a sound, words arising and passing away, an expression of the other person's empty boat. We stop spending so much energy on the exhausting project of maintaining our ego, worrying about our reputation, comparing ourselves to others, seeking validation, we can finally relax. We can participate in life with a newfound lightness and freedom, no longer crushed by the weight of a me that we have to constantly protect. We have now seen the illness, dukkha, its cause in our clinging, tanha, and the reason our clinging is futile, because both the world and the I that does the clinging are impermanent and in constant flow, anicca and anatta. The entire architecture of our suffering is built on a fundamental illusion, the belief that a solid self can find lasting happiness by possessing solid things. When the problem is seen with this much clarity, as an illusion built upon an illusion, the entire structure begins to tremble. When we see that the fire of suffering is fueled by our own ignorance and grasping, a new and hopeful question arises. What happens when we simply stop adding fuel? This question opens the door to the great promise at the heart of the Buddha's teaching, the possibility of a definitive end to suffering. We are now ready to explore the third noble truth. Having journeyed into the very heart of our human condition, we have faced some difficult truths. We have looked squarely at the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our lives, the illness of dukkha. We have uncovered its root cause in the relentless internal thirst of tanha, our clinging and craving. And we have seen why this strategy is doomed to fail by understanding the profound truths of impermanence, anicca, and the illusory nature of a separate self, anatta. This analysis, while honest, can feel heavy. It can seem as though we are caught in a perfectly designed trap, a prison of our own making from which there is no escape. It is precisely at this moment, when the diagnosis seems most bleak, that the great physician of the mind offers the third and most vital part of his teaching. This is the truth that turns the entire system from a grim philosophy into a path of radiant hope. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Stated simply, the third noble truth is the Buddha's radical promise that there is an end to dukkha. Our condition is not terminal. Our prison has a door, and that door can be unlocked. This is the good news, the light at the end of the tunnel. It asserts that a state of being completely free from suffering and its causes is not a myth or a distant dream, but an attainable reality. This state of ultimate freedom and peace is known by the famous but often misunderstood name, nirvana. To understand nirvana, we must first clear away the popular misconceptions. In the Western imagination, nirvana is often pictured as a kind of blissful heaven, a lush paradise one goes to after death as a reward for a virtuous life. This is a fundamental misinterpretation. Nirvana is not a place. It is not a destination. It is a state of mind, a psychological reality that can be experienced in this very life, right here and now. The key to understanding its true meaning lies in the word itself. The Sanskrit word nirvana literally means to extinguish, to blow out, or to quench, as one would extinguish a flame. This fire metaphor is the most powerful key to unlocking the meaning of nirvana. Imagine that our ordinary, untrained mind is on fire. It is ablaze with the fire of greed, the hot, searing flame of wanting more. More. It burns with the fire of aversion, the angry, destructive flame of hatred, resentment, and irritation. And it is choked by the thick, black smoke of ignorance, the delusion that clouds our vision and keeps us trapped in confusion. Our inner life is hot, feverish, agitated, and painful because we are constantly feeding these flames. Every time we grasp at a pleasant experience, we throw another log on the fire of greed. Every time we react with anger to an unpleasant one, we pour gasoline on the fire of aversion. Our whole life is an exhausting effort to manage this raging inferno. The third noble truth, Nirodha, is the discovery that we can stop feeding the fire. Through the cultivation of mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion, we can learn to stop throwing the fuel of craving and clinging onto the flames. We can recognize the spark of anger before it becomes a blaze and choose not to fan it with our thoughts. We can begin to see through the smoke of our delusions. Nirvana is the state that results when these fires are allowed to die down. When a fire is starved of fuel, it does not simply vanish, it slowly subsides. The roaring, destructive flames become a gentle, warm glow, and eventually, all that remains is coolness, stillness, and a vast, clear space. This coolness is nirvana. It is not something we acquire or achieve or add to ourselves. It is what is revealed when the obscurations of greed, aversion, and ignorance are removed. It is our natural state, the inherent peace and clarity of a mind that is no longer on fire. Therefore, to describe nirvana is often to describe the absence of these fires. But from this absence, profound positive qualities emerge. What is the nature of this cooled mind? It is characterized by a deep and unshakable peace, a tranquility that is not dependent on whether external circumstances are pleasant or unpleasant. The waves may still crash on the surface of the ocean of life, but the depths of the mind remain perfectly still. It is characterized by freedom, liberation from the tyrannical push and pull of our compulsive habits. We are no longer a slave to every desire that arises, no longer hijacked by every flash of anger. For the first time, we have a genuine choice in how we respond to life. It is also characterized by profound clarity and wisdom. The smoke of ignorance has cleared, allowing us to see reality as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, and empty of a solid self. We no longer see the world through the distorting lenses of our desires and fears. And finally, when the self-centered fires of I want and I hate are quenched, our natural, boundless heart is revealed. This is a state of unconditional loving kindness and compassion. Our sense of separation from others dissolves, and we feel a deep connection to all living things. Their joy becomes our joy, and their suffering becomes our suffering, not as a burden, but as a motivation for compassionate action. It is essential to understand that this freedom is available in this life. The Buddha and his enlightened followers were living examples of nirvana. They still got old, they still got sick, they still felt the physical pain of a body subject to impermanence. This is what is known as the first arrow, unavoidable physical and situational pains of life. But they did not suffer the second arrow. The second arrow is the one we shoot ourselves, the mental anguish, the resistance, the storytelling, the why me, that we pile on top of the initial pain. An enlightened being experiences the first arrow of a painful sensation, but because the fire of aversion has been extinguished, they do not create the second arrow of mental suffering. They experience pain, but they do not suffer from it. This is the state of nirvana, with remainder, the liberation that can be tasted while still in the body. The final state, at the death of the physical body, is called parinirvana, the complete and final cessation. But the essential prize, the freedom from mental suffering, is won here and now. So, the great physician's work is almost complete. He has diagnosed the illness, dukkha. He has identified its cause, tanha. And now, he has given us the extraordinary prognosis. A cure is possible. This cure, nirvana, is the complete extinguishing of the inner fires that cause us so much pain. We are not doomed. A life of profound peace, freedom, and compassion is within our reach. This hopeful promise naturally gives rise to the most important and practical question of all. If this state is possible, how do we get there? If the fire can be put out, what is the method? What is the specific, step-by-step prescription for the cure? This urgent, hopeful question for a clear path forward leads us directly to the physician's final offering, the detailed map to liberation. This is the fourth and final noble truth. the practical guide to ending suffering known as the Noble Eightfold Path. The journey so far has been one of deep diagnosis. With the unflinching clarity of a master physician, the Buddha has shown us the fundamental illness of our existence, dukkha. He has revealed its internal cause in our own thirst and clinging, tanha. He has shown us why our frantic grasping is doomed to fail by revealing the universal laws of impermanence, anicca, and no self, anatta. And then, just as the diagnosis seems complete, he has offered a prognosis of pure hope. A complete cure is possible. This cure, nirvana, is the extinguishing of the fires of greed, aversion, and ignorance, leading to a state of unshakable peace and freedom. This extraordinary promise naturally gives rise to the most urgent and practical question a person can ask. How? How do we walk this path from the feverish, burning state of dukkha to the cool, clear peace of nirvana? If there is a cure, what is the prescription? It is here that the physician unrolls the scroll and presents his final and most generous offering. This is the fourth noble truth, the practical, step-by-step treatment plan for the human condition. It is the blueprint for freedom, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, or Magga in the Pali language. This path is not a set of commandments to be followed out of blind faith. It is a curriculum for living, an empirical and experiential guide that invites us to test its truths in the laboratory of our own lives. It is often called the middle way, because it skillfully avoids the two extremes the Buddha saw as fruitless in the spiritual search. It avoids the extreme of sensual indulgence, the belief that happiness can be found by endlessly chasing pleasures, which only fuels the fires of tanha. It also avoids the extreme of severe self-mortification, the belief that punishing the body will purify the mind, which he found only leads to weakness and despair. The Eightfold Path is a balanced, intelligent, and compassionate way of life that integrates our inner world with our outer actions. It is a mistake to think of this as 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one after another. A better image is that of a strong rope woven from 8 individual strands. On their own, each strand may seem modest, even weak, but when they are woven together, supporting and strengthening each other, they create a rope of incredible strength, a rope capable of pulling us from the turbulent waters of suffering to the safe shore of liberation. We cultivate all 8 strands simultaneously, and as we do, our practice becomes a holistic and integrated way of life. These 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings: the training in ethical conduct, the training in mental discipline, and the training in wisdom. The first training, which provides the moral foundation for the entire path, is ethical conduct, or sila. It is the understanding that we cannot cultivate inner peace if our outer actions are causing harm and agitation to ourselves and others. Sila is about creating a life of integrity, a life free from remorse and guilt, which is the fertile ground upon which mental calm can grow. It includes 3 path factors. Right action is the commitment to abstain from harming living beings, from taking what is not given, and from sexual misconduct. It is a vow of harmlessness in our physical behavior. Right speech is the practice of using our words wisely and compassionately. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that pollutes the mind. It is the recognition that our words have the power to create either suffering or happiness. Right livelihood is the call to earn our living in a way that is honorable and does not cause harm. This means avoiding professions based on deception, exploitation, or dealing in weapons, poisons, or intoxicants. It is the integration of our ethical values into the fabric of our daily work. The second training, which is the heart of meditative practice, is mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the direct work of taming, purifying, and strengthening the mind itself. It includes 3 path factors. Right effort is the energetic and joyful will to cultivate a wholesome mind. It involves a 4-fold practice: the effort to prevent negative states from arising, the effort to abandon negative states that have already arisen, the effort to cultivate positive states that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain positive states that are already present. It is the practice of being a wise gardener of our own mind. Right mindfulness, or sati, is the essential quality of moment-to-moment awareness. It is the practice of paying bare attention to our experience as it unfolds, observing our body, our feelings, our thoughts, and the world around us without judgment or commentary. It is the skill of being truly present for our own life. Right concentration is the development of a calm, stable, and unified mind through dedicated meditation practice. As the mind becomes less scattered and more focused, it becomes a powerful instrument capable of seeing reality with penetrating insight. The third and final training, which is the ultimate goal of the path, is wisdom, or panna. This is the clear seeing that liberates the mind. It is supported and made possible by the foundation of ethical conduct and the tool of a disciplined mind. It also includes 2 path factors, which in fact bookend the entire path. The first is right view. This is the starting point, the guiding compass for the journey. It means having a clear intellectual understanding of the nature of reality, specifically understanding the 4 noble truths themselves. It is the theoretical map that we set out to verify through our own experience. The culmination of the path is the experiential realization of right view, but it is guided by the second wisdom factor, right intention. This is the quality of our motivation, the why behind our practice. It is about consciously purifying our hearts and our will. It involves cultivating 3 core intentions: the intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go of our clinging and attachments; the intention of goodwill, the universal, unconditional love for all beings; and the intention of harmlessness, or compassion, the deep wish that all beings be free from suffering. Right intention is what turns this path from a mechanical self-improvement project into a heartfelt journey of love and liberation. These 3 trainings, sila, samadhi, and panna, work together in a beautiful synergy. A life of ethical conduct leads to a mind free from guilt, which makes it easier to develop calm and concentration. A calm and concentrated mind is the perfect tool for seeing reality clearly, which gives rise to wisdom. And profound wisdom naturally reinforces our commitment to act and speak with kindness and compassion. Each part of the path supports and deepens every other part. The Noble Eightfold Path is therefore not a grim list of rules, but a magnificent and comprehensive design for a life well lived. It is a path of beauty, integrity, and profound self-discovery. It is the practical, detailed answer to our deepest questions. We have now surveyed this entire map, this blueprint for freedom. The journey ahead of us in our exploration is to begin to walk this path, not just in theory, but in practice, by cultivating these 8 interwoven qualities in our lives. And to begin this great journey, we must start with the most essential tool, the very anchor of mental discipline, the practice that pulls our scattered mind out of the past and the future and places it firmly in the reality of the present. We will begin with right mindfulness and its most simple, powerful, and accessible foundation, the awareness of the breath. We have now arrived at the very heart of our practical journey. We hold in our hands the blueprint for freedom, the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a comprehensive guide, touching every aspect of our lives. But a map, no matter how perfect, is useless until we take the first step. That first step onto the path The beginning of the training in mental discipline is the cultivation of right mindfulness. And the gateway to this profound practice, the key that unlocks the door to the present moment, is the most simple, humble, and constant companion we have. It is our own breath. Why the breath? In its profound wisdom, the Buddhist tradition chose the breath as the primary object of meditation for several perfect reasons. First, it is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is an ever-present rhythm. You do not need a special cushion, a quiet room, or a sacred temple to find your breath. Your laboratory for this practice is your own body, available to you 24 hours a day, wherever you are. Second, and most crucially, the breath is always in the present. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot breathe in the future. The sensation of the air entering and leaving your body is an exclusively present moment event. Therefore, to place your attention on the breath is by definition to bring your mind home to the here and now. It is the perfect anchor to drop when you find yourself lost in the stormy seas of yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties. Furthermore, the breath acts as a magical bridge between our conscious mind and our unconscious body. It is an automatic, physiological process, yet we can also control it at will. It is a mirror that reflects our inner state. When we are anxious, our breath is fast and shallow. When we are calm, it is slow and deep. But it is also a tool that can shape our inner state. By consciously calming the breath, we can send a powerful signal of safety and peace back to our nervous system, calming the mind. This practice of mindful breathing is called anapanasati, and it is the foundation upon which the entire edifice of mental cultivation is built. Let us now explore this practice, not as a theory, but as a gentle invitation. To begin, find a posture that embodies both dignity and comfort. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor or on a cushion on the ground. The most important thing is to keep your back relatively straight, but not stiff or rigid. This allows the energy to flow and encourages a state of wakefulness. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap and gently close your eyes, or leave them half open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. Now, offer yourself an act of kindness. Give yourself permission for just a few moments to let go of all your duties, all your plans, all your worries. Your only task is to arrive in this moment, in this body. Begin by bringing your awareness to the simple fact that you are breathing. You don't need to change your breath in any way. Simply notice it. Let it be natural. Your body knows how to breathe without any help from you. Your role is simply to become an interested, friendly observer. Bring your attention to the physical sensations of the breath. Where do you feel it most distinctly? Perhaps you notice the cool sensation of the air as it enters your nostrils, and the warmer sensation as it leaves. Perhaps you feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Or perhaps you can sense the subtle expansion and contraction of your abdomen in your belly area. There is no right or wrong place. Simply choose one of these spots to be your home base, your anchor point for the attention. Now, with your attention resting at your chosen spot, undertake the simplest of tasks. Feel the entire duration of one in-breath, from its very beginning, through its middle, to its very end. Then, feel the entire duration of one out-breath, from its beginning to its end. That is all. You are not trying to achieve a special state. You are not waiting for something spectacular to happen. You are simply becoming intimate with the most basic rhythm of your own life. As the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, you can support this with a simple mental note. Breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. You are simply acknowledging what is already happening. Inevitably, perhaps within seconds, You will notice that your mind has wandered. It has been snagged by a thought, a memory, a sound, a plan. It is crucial to understand this. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are failing or that you are bad at meditation. This is simply the nature of the untrained mind. It is what minds do. The moment you realize, oh, my mind has wandered, that moment of realization is a moment of perfect mindfulness. It is a moment of victory. Now comes the most important part of the practice. What do you do when you notice the mind has wandered? You follow a simple and compassionate process. First, you gently acknowledge where the mind went, without any judgment. Thinking. Then, you gently let go of the thought, as you would release a butterfly from your hand. Finally, and most kindly, you escort your attention back to your anchor, the physical sensation of the breath. You do this with the same gentleness you would use to guide a lost child back to their parent. Over and over again, the mind will wander, and over again, you will gently and patiently guide it back. This process of returning is the practice. Each time you return your attention to the breath, you are performing one repetition, one bicep curl for the attentional muscles of your brain. You are not training yourself to never have thoughts. You are training yourself in the art of coming back to the present moment. As you sit with this simple practice, you begin to notice its profound effects. On a physiological level, focusing on the slow, rhythmic breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural rest and digest response. It is the antidote to the chronic fight or flight stress state that so many of us live in. The heart rate slows, blood pressure lowers, and the muscles begin to relax. You are signaling to your body, on the most primal level, that you are safe. Psychologically, the effects are even more transformative. By patiently watching the breath, you are creating a space of stillness within yourself. You are discovering a quiet room in a noisy house, a sanctuary you can retreat to at any time. More profoundly, by observing your thoughts come and go without being swept away by them, you begin to have the direct, experiential insight that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that is watching the thoughts. This insight is the beginning of true freedom. It creates a buffer between stimulus and response, allowing you to navigate the challenges of life with more calm, clarity, and wisdom. The power of the breath is the power of the present moment. It is your most faithful friend, your most reliable anchor in the storms of life. It is the foundational skill of right mindfulness, the starting point for taming the wild energy of the mind. By becoming proficient in resting our attention on this simple, stable object, we develop the capacity to then expand our field of awareness. We learn to keep the anchor of the breath close by, as a home base to return to, while we begin to courageously observe everything else that arises in our experience. We learn to watch our changing feelings, our turbulent thoughts, and our bodily sensations with the same calm, curious, and non-judgmental attention we have brought to the breath. This gentle expansion of our awareness is the next great adventure on our path, the journey of becoming the silent observer of our own inner world. Having learned to steady our minds upon the gentle rhythm of the breath, we have found our anchor. We have discovered a safe harbor in the present moment, a place to which we can return when we are lost in the storms of thought. But this anchor is not meant to keep our ship permanently moored in a tiny, sheltered bay. It is meant to provide the stability needed to set sail and explore the vast ocean of our own experience with courage and curiosity. The next step on our path is to gently widen the beam of our awareness, moving from the focused point of the breath to embrace the entire landscape of our inner and outer worlds. This is the practice of becoming the silent observer. The heart of this practice is a quality the Buddha called bare attention. It is the art of seeing things exactly as they are, without adding our own layers of story, judgment, analysis, or opinion. It is also the art of not subtracting from our experience, not denying, suppressing, or avoiding what is present. Imagine a perfect, clean mirror. Its nature is simply to reflect whatever comes before it, without preference. It reflects a beautiful flower and a piece of dust with equal, unbiased clarity. It does not cling to the image of the flower, nor does it try to push away the image of the dust. To practice as the silent observer is to cultivate this mirror-like quality of mind. We become an impartial scientist in the laboratory of our own being, whose sole purpose is to observe phenomena as they arise and pass away. We can begin this exploration by opening our awareness to the field of the body. Beyond the breath, your body is a universe of sensation, constantly sending you information. As you sit, you can gently scan your awareness through your body and simply notice what is there. Perhaps there is a feeling of warmth in your hands, or a coolness on your skin. You might notice a point of pressure where your body meets the chair. There could be an itch on your cheek, a tingling in your foot, or a tightness in your shoulders. The practice of bare attention is not to fix, change, or even name these sensations, but simply to know them directly. Ah, there is warmth. There is an itching sensation. You meet the raw data of your experience before your mind has a chance to weave a story around it, such as, "This itch is so annoying, I need to scratch it." By simply resting in awareness of these physical sensations, you become more grounded and embodied, more present in the physical reality of this moment. From the body, we can expand our awareness to include the world of sound. Ordinarily, we hear sounds through a filter of judgment. We label them as pleasant or unpleasant, important or distracting. Bare attention invites us to hear sounds as pure sensory events, as simple vibrations in the air. You can sit and just listen. You might hear the distant hum of traffic, the chirping of a bird, the creak of the floorboards. The practice is to receive these sounds without resistance. The sound of a siren is not bad. It is simply a loud, rising and falling vibration. By letting sounds wash through our awareness without getting snagged by them, we learn to be at peace with our environment, even when it is not perfectly silent. Now we venture into a more challenging and more rewarding field of observation, our emotions. Typically, when a strong emotion like anger, sadness, or fear arises, we do one of two things. We either get completely lost in it, becoming the anger and acting it out, or we try to suppress it, pushing it down and pretending it isn't there. Both of these strategies are forms of suffering. Mindfulness offers a third way. As the silent observer, when an emotion arises, we learn to turn towards it with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. We recognize, sadness is present. Then, instead of getting lost in the story of why we are sad, we investigate the raw, physical feeling of the sadness itself. What does this feel like in my body? Is it a heaviness in the chest, a lump in the throat, a feeling of emptiness in the stomach? By meeting the emotion with this kind and curious attention, something magical happens. We are no longer possessed by it. We see that the emotion is simply a powerful but temporary wave of energy passing through our body and mind. We are not the sadness. We are the space in which the sadness is happening. This practice robs the difficult emotion of its absolute power over us. Finally, we apply this observational power to the stream of thoughts themselves. Here, the task is to watch the thoughts as they drift across the screen of the mind, without getting on board and writing them into a story. We sit on the riverbank and watch the river of thought flow by, without jumping in. A thought about a work project appears. We note it. A planning thought, and let it go. A memory from childhood floats by. We note it, a memory, and let it go. a harsh judgment of ourselves arises, we note it, a judging thought, and let it go. We do not engage, we do not debate, we do not analyze, we simply watch. To help with this practice, it is useful to hold in mind the beautiful metaphor of the sky and the clouds. Imagine that your fundamental nature, your awareness, is like a vast, open, clear blue sky. It is inherently spacious, peaceful, and untroubled. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are like clouds that drift through the sky. Some clouds are beautiful and white and fluffy. These are our pleasant thoughts and feelings. Some are dark and heavy and full of thunder and lightning. These are our difficult emotions like anger and grief. The crucial insight is this: no matter how dark or stormy the clouds are, they can never harm or stain the sky. The sky's nature remains pure, open, and untouched. The storm may temporarily obscure the blue of the sky, but the sky is always there, effortlessly holding the storm within its vast embrace. Our habitual mistake is that we forget we are the sky, and we believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we think, "I am sad." We contract around it, become the storm, and lose all sense of our own spaciousness. The practice of being the silent observer is the practice of remembering that we are the sky. We learn to rest in our vast, sky-like awareness and allow the clouds of our experience, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant, to arise, float through our space, and dissolve on their own without us having to do a thing. The ultimate gift of this practice is the creation of what has been called the sacred pause. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Our mindfulness practice is the act of discovering, inhabiting, and expanding that sacred space. Ordinarily, someone says something insulting, the stimulus, and our reaction is immediate, automatic anger, the response. There is no space. But with the training of the silent observer, we learn to witness the insult, and then witness the flash of anger arising in our mind and body. Because we are the sky and not the cloud, we don't have to be hijacked by it. We can pause, and in that pause, a universe of freedom opens up. We can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion rather than with blind reactivity. This is the end of our slavery to habit and the beginning of true freedom. Having cultivated this powerful tool, this capacity to observe our inner world with calm and clarity, we are now equipped to approach the most stubborn and emotionally charged clouds in our sky. We can begin to apply this spacious, non-judgmental awareness to the heavy, recurring weather patterns that drift in from our past. With the wisdom of the silent observer, we can now undertake the delicate and healing work of releasing the weight of yesterday, not by fighting it, but by meeting it with the gentle, liberating light of awareness. Having cultivated the steady, watchful presence of the silent observer, we now possess the essential tool for our most delicate and liberating work. We have seen how the weight of yesterday holds us captive, and we have learned to watch the clouds of our experience float by without being swept up in the storm. Now, we bring this powerful, spacious awareness to the oldest and heaviest clouds in our skies. Painful memories, the regrets, and the resentments that have defined so much of our inner lives. We are now ready to learn the gentle and courageous art of letting go. First, we must understand that letting go is not a passive event. It is not forgetting. The mind will not simply erase its most powerful impressions. It is not suppression. Pushing a memory down only gives it more strength in the shadows. Letting go is a conscious, active, and deeply compassionate act. It is the deliberate choice to unclench the fist of the mind that has been gripping so tightly onto a painful past. It is the repeated decision to stop feeding a story that no longer serves us. Let us return to our two monks at the river. The senior monk performed a simple act of compassion and then walked on, his mind free. The junior monk, hours later, was still mentally carrying the woman, burdened by his own judgment and indignation. The crucial question is, how did the senior monk put her down? The answer is simple. He just didn't pick her up again. After he set her down on the riverbank, his mind moved on to the next moment, the feeling of the path, the sound of the birds. When the opportunity arose to replay the scene in his mind, to analyze it or judge it, he simply let that opportunity pass. Letting go is this continuous, gentle act of non-engagement with the stories of the past. It is a practice, not a single, dramatic event. One of the most powerful and immediate ways to begin this practice is through the simple act of naming or mental noting. When a difficult memory or a painful emotion associated with the past arises, our habit is to instantly get lost in the narrative. We are no longer in the present, we are back in the original scene, feeling all the pain anew. Instead of being swept away, we can apply bare attention. We pause, breathe, and gently name the primary emotion we are feeling. If a memory of betrayal arises, instead of replaying the entire drama, we can simply note, anger is here. This is what sadness feels like. Resentment is present. This simple act of labeling is transformative. It immediately creates a space between you, the observer, and the emotion. You are no longer drowning in the river of anger. You are sitting on the bank, watching the current of anger flow by. By naming it, you are taming it. You take the chaotic, overwhelming energy of the emotion and contain it within a single word, making it less intimidating. It stops the story from spiraling out of control and brings you back to the direct experience of the present moment. This is just a feeling, a sensation in my body. It is here now. It too will pass. From this place of mindful distance, we can engage in the profound practice of forgiveness. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of letting go. We often think of forgiveness as something we do for the other person, a way of condoning their behavior. This is not the Buddhist understanding. Forgiveness is, first and foremost, a gift you give to yourself. It is the ultimate act of self-compassion. Holding on to resentment and a desire for revenge is like carrying a burning coal in your hand, hoping to one day throw it at the person who hurt you. In the meantime, the only person getting burned is you. Forgiveness is the wise and courageous decision to put down the coal. It does not mean what the person did was okay. It does not mean you have to trust them or even see them again. It is simply the internal act of cutting the cord of suffering that binds you to them. It is declaring, your actions will no longer have the power to cause me pain in the present. I release you from the prison of my mind so that I may be free. Even more challenging, and often more necessary, is the act of forgiving ourselves. We can be our own most merciless judges, replaying our own mistakes for years, bathing in the toxic waters of shame and regret. The practice here is the same. It is the recognition that continuing to punish yourself for a past action is futile. It does not change what happened. It only destroys your peace in the now. Self-forgiveness is the wisdom to acknowledge that at that time in the past, you acted with the level of understanding, skill, and consciousness that you possessed. Perhaps now you know better. The lesson has been learned. You can choose to release yourself from the burden of your own condemnation. It is the act of treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a dear friend who had made a mistake. To aid in this process, we can use the creative power of our own minds through visualization. Since the mind thinks so readily in images, we can use images to train it in the feeling of release. You might try this practice. Close your eyes and imagine yourself sitting beside a gentle, flowing stream. As a painful memory or feeling from the past arises, imagine placing it onto a large, green leaf. Then, gently place that leaf into the water and watch as the current slowly carries it away. Follow it with your gaze until it floats around a bend and disappears from sight. You can do this with each painful thought as it arises, again and again. Each time you do so, you are training your mind in the intention of release. Another powerful image is to place the heavy memory or feeling into the basket of a hot air balloon. With a conscious intention to let go, you visualize yourself cutting the ropes that hold it to the ground. You watch as the balloon lifts off, slowly and peacefully, rising higher and higher into the vast blue sky until it is just a tiny speck and then vanishes completely. These visualizations are not magic tricks. They are skillful means, ways of using the language of the mind to create new habits of letting go rather than holding on. It is vital to remember that letting go, especially of deep and long-held hurts, is a gradual process. It is a practice, not a destination. You may find that you have to put the same woman down by the river 100 times a day. The memory may still arise, but each time it does, you have a new opportunity to meet it differently. Each time you recognize it, name it, offer a moment of forgiveness, and gently return to the present, you are weakening its hold on you. You are unclenching the fist, finger by finger. You are rewriting the neural pathways of your brain, creating new grooves of release to replace the old, worn-out grooves of resentment. The art of letting go is the art of bringing kindness and wisdom to the wounded places within us. It is the application of our mindful awareness to heal our own hearts. As we practice this, we begin to clear away the heavy debris of the past. We are sweeping the inner house clean, and in doing so, we create an empty space. This emptiness is not a sterile void. It is a fertile, open ground. Having pulled out the bitter weeds of resentment and regret, we are now ready to intentionally plant something new in this prepared soil. We are ready to move from the practice of releasing the negative to the practice of actively cultivating the most powerful healing agent known to the human heart, the boundless and beautiful quality of compassion. Having learned the gentle art of letting go, we have begun to clear the landscape of our hearts. We have swept away the heavy debris of old resentments and the sharp stones of regret. In their place, an open, fertile ground has been revealed. But nature does not leave a space empty for long, and neither should we. Having removed the bitter weeds, we now have the opportunity to intentionally plant a garden of profound beauty and healing. We move from the practice of releasing what is painful to the active cultivation of what is wholesome. We now turn to the most powerful healing balm known to the human spirit, the radiant and transformative quality of compassion or karuna. It is essential at the outset to understand what true compassion is and what it is not. In our modern language, it is often confused with pity, but pity and compassion are fundamentally different. Pity looks down from a place of superiority. It says, "Oh, you poor thing," and in doing so, it creates a distance, a separation between the observer and the one who suffers. Compassion, on the other hand, is a recognition of shared humanity. It is the ability to stand alongside another, to feel with them. It says, "I see your pain, and it touches my heart because I know what it is to feel pain." Pity separates, compassion connects. Karuna is this trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, coupled with the active aspiration to see that suffering relieved. It is not a passive feeling, but an engaged, heartfelt wish for healing and freedom. For most of us, especially in a culture that values strength and self-criticism, The most difficult place to apply this healing balm is to ourselves. The practice of compassion must begin at home, with the person we spend every moment of our lives with, our own self. We are often our own worst enemies, our own harshest critics. We hold ourselves to impossible standards and berate ourselves for the smallest of failures. To practice self-compassion is to begin to change this abusive inner relationship. It is not an act of self-indulgence or weakness. It is an act of courage and wisdom. You cannot pour water from an empty cup. You cannot offer genuine compassion to others if you cannot first offer it to yourself. The practice is simple, yet profound. When you find yourself in a moment of struggle, you've made a mistake, you feel inadequate, you are in pain, you can apply 3 steps. First, you mindfully acknowledge the pain. Ouch! This is a moment of suffering. You turn toward the feeling instead of away from it. Second, you connect with your common humanity. You remind yourself that struggle, failure, and imperfection are not personal defects. They are universal aspects of the human experience. Everyone feels this way sometimes. To be human is to be imperfect. This simple reminder dissolves the painful illusion that you are alone in your suffering. Third, you offer yourself active kindness. You can place a hand over your heart, feel its warmth, and ask, "What do I need right now?" Perhaps you need to just breathe for a moment. Perhaps you need to speak to yourself with the same gentle, encouraging words you would offer a dear friend. May I be kind to myself. May I accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. This is the beginning of healing our own hearts. The journey from personal suffering to universal compassion is beautifully illustrated in the ancient story of Kisa Gautami. She was a young woman whose first and only child had died. Driven mad by a grief she could not accept, she wandered from house to house, clutching the small, lifeless body, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back. Some mocked her, some ignored her, but one kind person directed her to the Buddha, saying he was the great physician. Kisa Gautami ran to the Buddha and pleaded with him. The Buddha looked at her with eyes of immense compassion, and instead of dismissing her, he gave her a task. "There is only one medicine that can help you," he said. "Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed, but it must be taken from a house where no one, a parent, a child, a spouse, or even a servantess, ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gautami began her quest. At the first house, a woman answered the door. "Yes, of course, I will give you a mustard seed," she said kindly. But when Kisa Gautami asked her condition, the woman's face fell. "Alas," she said, "my beloved husband died only last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Everyone was willing to help, but every single family had been touched by the hand of death. One had lost a parent, another a child, another a sibling. As the day wore on, and she went from door to door, a profound transformation began to take place within her. The sharp, frantic, isolating agony of her own personal grief began to soften. She saw that her pain, which felt so unique and unbearable, was in fact the shared inheritance of all humanity. Every person she met was carrying a similar sorrow. Her heart, once clenched tight around her own loss, began to open. It trembled not just for her son, but for the husband who died last year, for the parent lost long ago, for every person living behind every door. Her personal suffering blossomed into universal compassion. She returned to the Buddha that evening without a mustard seed, but with a heart that had been broken open to the vastness of human experience. She had learned, in the most direct way possible, the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, and in doing so, her own pain was transformed into a boundless empathy for all. This is the path of compassion we can all walk. We begin with our own pain, our own suffering, we learn to meet it with kindness. Then, like Kisa Gotami, we look out at the world and we begin to see with new eyes. We see that the angry driver on the road, the difficult colleague at work, the person who speaks harshly to us, they are all struggling with their own forms of dukkha. Their actions, which we so often take personally, are almost always the result of their own inner pain, their own fear, their own confusion. Their boat is not steered by a malicious self, but is adrift on the currents of their own conditioning. To see others in this light does not mean we condone harmful behavior or become passive doormats. We can still set firm boundaries and protect ourselves, but we do so not from a place of hatred or righteous anger, but from a place of wise and sad understanding. This person is suffering, and in their confusion, they are creating more suffering for others. This perspective melts the ice of our judgment and resentment. It allows us to respond to difficult situations with clarity and strength, but without the poison of hatred in our own hearts. Compassion, karuna, is the ultimate healing balm. It is the direct antidote to the poison of aversion and hatred. It is the warmth that thaws the frozen, defended places within us. It is the supreme connector, dissolving the illusion that we are separate by linking us all through our shared experience of life's joys and sorrows. When we practice compassion for ourselves, we heal the deep wounds of self-criticism and shame. When we extend it to others, we transform our relationships and begin to heal the world. It is the natural and radiant expression of a wise and open heart. Having planted this seed of compassion, the wish for all beings to be free from suffering, we can now turn to its beautiful, radiant twin. If compassion is the heart's response to pain, what is its response to the simple fact of existence itself? We move from the wish to remove the negative to the active, generous cultivation of the positive. We learn to tend a garden not just free of weeds, but filled with beautiful flowers. This is the practice of wishing for the happiness and well-being of all, the boundless, unconditional friendliness known as loving kindness. Having soothed the wounded parts of our hearts with the healing balm of compassion, we now turn to its radiant twin. If compassion is the heart's response to the presence of pain, loving kindness is the heart's proactive offering of warmth to the world. If compassion clears the ground of thorns and stones, loving kindness plants a garden of beautiful, fragrant flowers. This is the practice of metta, a Pali word often translated as loving kindness, but which also carries the meaning of unconditional friendliness, goodwill, and benevolence. It is the sincere and heartfelt wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and well. It is vital to understand that metta is not the sentimental, conditional, and often possessive emotion that we typically call love. It is not dependent on whether someone is pleasing to us or meets our expectations. Metta is far more stable, boundless, and radical. The most helpful image for understanding its nature is that of the sun. The sun shines its light and warmth down upon the earth without any discrimination. It shines on the beautiful rose and the thorny weed, on the saint and the sinner, on the rich and the poor. The sun does not decide who is worthy of its rays. Its very nature is simply to radiate. The practice of metta is the cultivation of this inner sun, the development of a heart that can radiate warmth and goodwill in all directions, starting with the most difficult person for many of us to love, ourselves. The formal cultivation of this quality is a beautiful and systematic meditation practice. It works by gradually expanding the circle of our goodwill, moving from the easy to the more challenging. It begins, always, with the self. To try and offer genuine loving kindness to others before we have offered it to ourselves is like trying to light another's candle when our own is not yet lit. So, we sit in a posture of comfort and dignity, and we begin by offering the warmth of metta inward. We silently repeat a series of heartfelt phrases, allowing the intention behind them to permeate our being. Classic phrases include, "May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be truly happy and peaceful. May I be healthy and strong. May I live my life with ease." It does not matter if you don't feel a flood of emotion at first. The practice is in the gentle, patient repetition, the sincere planting of these wholesome seeds in the soil of your own heart. Once you have generated some feeling of warmth and friendliness for yourself, you then expand the circle to include a benefactor or a dear friend. Bring to mind someone who it is very easy for you to care about, a beloved family member, a cherished friend, a respected teacher, or even a beloved pet. Picture them in your mind's eye, see them smiling and happy, and then direct the full force of your goodwill toward them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel your heart opening and sending this warm, friendly energy to them. Allow yourself to rejoice in their goodness and their happiness. The next stage begins to stretch the muscle of the heart. You bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see or interact with, but for whom you have no strong feelings of like or dislike. Perhaps the person who checks out your groceries, a neighbor you pass on the street, or someone you see on your daily commute. Because there is no pre-existing emotional charge, this stage can sometimes feel mechanical, but it is a crucial step. The practice is to see this person simply as a fellow human being who, just like you, wishes to be happy and to avoid suffering. Recognizing this shared aspiration, you extend the same phrases of metta to them. Just as I wish to be happy, may you also be happy. May you be safe and well. In doing so, you are training your mind to see beyond the narrow categories of friend and stranger, and to recognize a fundamental kinship with all people. Now comes the most challenging and transformative stage of the practice, offering metta to a difficult person. It is wise to begin with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the source of your deepest wounds. Bring this person to mind, and as best you can, try to offer them the same wishes for their well-being. This can feel counterintuitive or even impossible at first. It is essential to remember that this practice is not for them, it is for you. It is not an endorsement of their harmful behavior. It is an act of profound self-healing. Holding on to hatred and ill will poisons your own heart. By offering this person a wish for their happiness, you are not saying what they did was right. You are saying, I will no longer allow your actions to cause hatred to arise in my heart. I release you from my anger for the sake of my own peace. It is a recognition that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering and delusion, and to wish them happiness is to wish them an end to the causes of their hurtful behavior. This is the ultimate antidote to resentment. Finally, having worked through these specific categories, you let the circle of metta become boundless. You radiate this feeling of loving kindness outward in all directions. You offer it to all people in your town, your country, and the world. You extend it to all animals, all creatures seen and unseen. You include all beings, near and far, great and small, those you like, those you are neutral to, and those you find difficult. You hold the entire world in your compassionate embrace, repeating phrases like, may all beings everywhere, without exception, be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from suffering. In this moment, the illusion of a separate self begins to dissolve into a vast, interconnected web of benevolent awareness. This practice is far more than just a sentimental exercise in positive thinking. Modern neuroscience is now confirming the ancient wisdom of this practice. Studies have shown that regular loving-kindness meditation can literally rewire the brain, strengthening the neural circuits associated with empathy, happiness, and emotional regulation. It is a direct and powerful antidote to the poison of aversion, anger, and ill will. You cannot simultaneously hold a feeling of genuine, warm metta and a feeling of cold, hard hatred in your mind at the same time. One necessarily displaces the other. When you feel a surge of irritation towards someone in your daily life, you can practice a moment of micro-metta, silently offering them a quick wish. May you be happy. This simple act can instantly de-escalate your own inner reaction and transform a moment of potential conflict into a moment of inner peace. Metta is the beautiful art of tending the garden of the heart. Compassion removes the weeds of suffering, while loving kindness plants the flowers of joy and goodwill. Together, they create a rich and resilient inner landscape. When we have cultivated these profound states of being within ourselves, they do not remain as a private, internal experience. They naturally begin to overflow. A heart filled with compassion and friendliness cannot help but express itself in the world. This inner transformation inevitably begins to manifest in our outer actions, and most immediately and powerfully in the way we use our words. This leads us to the next step on our path, exploring how to bring this cultivated wisdom into our communication through the vital practice of right speech. Having planted the seeds of compassion and loving kindness in the garden of our hearts, we now arrive at a crucial point in our journey. These profound inner states are not meant to remain a private, hidden treasure. They naturally seek expression, and the most immediate, powerful, and constant way they overflow into the world is through our speech. The words we use, day in and day out, have an immense power to create realities. They can be weapons that inflict deep and lasting wounds, or they can be instruments that offer profound healing. The practice of right speech, or samavaka, is the art of consciously wielding this power, of transforming our communication from a source of reactivity and harm into an expression of wisdom and compassion. To practice right speech is to recognize that every word we utter is a form of action, an event with consequences for both ourselves and others. It is not a restrictive code of conduct or a form of censorship, but a joyful and liberating training in skillful communication. The Buddhist tradition outlines this practice in 4 beautiful and practical guidelines, 4 ways to ensure our words are aligned with our deepest intentions. The first guideline is to abstain from false speech. On the surface, this means not telling lies, but its meaning is far deeper. It is a commitment to radical truthfulness in all our interactions. This includes avoiding the subtle forms of dishonesty we so often engage in, exaggeration to make a story more interesting, flattery that we do not mean, making promises we have no intention of keeping, or speaking half-truths to protect our ego. To live truthfully is to create a life of profound simplicity. When you speak the truth, you never have to remember what you said. There is no stress of maintaining a web of deception. Your inner and outer worlds become congruent, and this integrity creates a mind that is calm, clear, and worthy of your own trust. The second guideline is to abstain from divisive speech. This is speech that is intended to create discord and set people against one another. Its most common and insidious form is gossip. When we gossip, we often feel a temporary and unwholesome sense of importance or intimacy, bonding with one person at the expense of another who is not present. But this act poisons the well of community. It sows seeds of mistrust and disharmony. The practice of right speech invites us to become a force for unity. It encourages us to speak in ways that highlight common ground, that encourage reconciliation, and that bring people together. It means that when we speak of others, we do so with the same respect and kindness we would use if they were standing in the room with us. The third guideline is to abstain from harsh speech. This, again, is more than just the obvious prohibitions against yelling, cursing, or insults. It includes all the subtle barbs and aggressions we use to express our displeasure: biting sarcasm, backhanded compliments, cynical remarks, and needlessly blunt criticism. Harsh speech, in any form, comes from a place of anger and aversion, and it only ever creates more defensiveness and pain in the world. The practice is to cultivate a habit of gentleness. It is to learn how to speak difficult truths when they must be spoken, with a tone of kindness and a genuine desire to be helpful rather than hurtful. It is the art of clothing our words in softness so they may be received with an open heart. The fourth and final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This is aimless, pointless talk that serves no purpose other than to fill silence or to distract ourselves from the present moment. It is mindless complaining, endless speculation about trivialities, or repetitive conversation that clutters our own minds and the minds of others. This does not mean we must always be stern and serious. Joyful, light-hearted, and humorous speech can be incredibly beneficial. What it means is to speak with mindfulness and purpose, to ask ourselves, is what I am about to say meaningful? Is it helpful? Is it timely? It is the practice of valuing silence, of understanding that sometimes the most skillful and compassionate communication is to say nothing at all. To help us put these 4 guidelines into practice in the heat of the moment, we can use a simple and elegant tool known as the 3 gates, or 3 sieves, a teaching often attributed to the great philosopher Socrates. The story is told of a man who rushed up to Socrates, bursting with news. "Socrates," he said, "I have to tell you something about your friend." Socrates held up a hand. "Wait," he said. "Before you speak, I would ask you to pass your story through 3 small gates. The first gate is truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man looked uncomfortable. "Well, no," he said. "I just heard it from someone else." Socrates nodded. "All right, let's try the second gate, the gate of kindness. Is what you want to tell me something kind?" The man winced. "No, actually, it's quite the opposite." Socrates paused again. "And the third gate, the gate of usefulness. Is this information going to be useful to me in any way?" The man had to admit that it was not. "So," Socrates concluded, "if what you wish to say is not true, not kind, and not useful, why say it at all?" These 3 gates are a powerful checklist we can use in our own lives. Before we speak, especially when we feel an emotional urge to say something, we can pause and ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? If it does not pass through these gates, perhaps it is best left unsaid. This mindful pause is the space where our wisdom can manifest. Finally, we must recognize that right speech is only half of the equation of skillful communication. The other, equally important half, is how we listen. The practice of mindfulness extends to our ears as well. This is the practice of deep listening. Ordinarily, when we listen to another person, we are not truly present. We are busy formulating our reply, judging their words, waiting for a pause so we can jump in, or relating everything they say back to our own experience. Deep listening is the practice of setting aside our own agenda entirely. We listen with only one goal: to understand the other person and to offer them the gift of our full, non-judgmental presence. We listen for the feelings behind their words. We listen to their pain, their joy, their hopes, their fears. To offer another human being the space to be truly heard, without interruption or advice, is one of the most profound acts of healing we can perform. It is the audible expression of compassion. The practice of right speech, in its entirety, is the practice of bringing our hearts and minds into alignment with our words. It is the conscious choice to use our communication to weave a world of greater clarity, harmony, and kindness. But our words, as powerful as they are still only one facet of our engagement with the world. This same intention to act with wisdom and compassion can be extended beyond our speech to encompass everything we do. How do we take this mindfulness off the meditation cushion, out of our conversations, and into the very fabric of our jobs, our chores, and our daily routines? How do we learn to make our entire life our sacred practice? This leads us to explore the art of finding our monastery in the midst of the everyday world. Having cultivated the inner states of compassion and loving kindness, and having learned to align our speech with these wholesome qualities, we now arrive at the great integration. A common misconception about spiritual practice is that it is something separate from our daily livsa, quiet half hour on a meditation cushion in the morning, a weekend retreat once a year, a book read before bed. We see our practice life and our real life as two different worlds. The profound shift in perspective that this path offers is the complete dissolution of that wall. The ultimate goal is not to become a perfect meditator in a silent room, but to become a fully awake and compassionate human being in the midst of this messy, beautiful, and challenging world. Your office, your kitchen, your car, the line at the grocery store, this is your true monastery. Your entire life is the practice ground. The key to transforming our ordinary life into our monastery is the application of mindful awareness to our everyday activities. We have already trained in anchoring our attention to the breath. Now, we learn to bring that same quality of presence to everything we do, turning the mundane into the meditative. Consider the simple act of washing the dishes. For most of us, this is a chore to be rushed through while our minds are a million miles away, playing a conversation, worrying about tomorrow, lost in a fantasy. But it can be a profound practice. To wash the dishes mindfully is to be fully present with the act of washing. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You see the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. You hear the sound of the sponge against the plate. You are not trying to get to the end of the task. The task itself is the entire universe in that moment. As the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, if while washing the dishes we are thinking only of the cup of tea that awaits us, then we are not truly living. We are a ghost, haunting our own lives. To be awake is to wash the dishes, to wash the dishes. This same principle can be applied to anything. When you walk from your car to your office, you can feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground, a rhythm that can anchor you in the present with every step. When you drink your morning coffee, you can take a moment to truly taste it, to feel its warmth, to appreciate the long chain of causes and conditions that brought that cup to your hands: the sun, the rain, the farmer, the truck driver. By weaving these moments of presence into the fabric of our day, we begin to spend more time in our lives and less time lost in our thoughts about our lives. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this wisdom. A young student, eager for esoteric knowledge, asks a Zen master, "What did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replies, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, slightly disappointed, then asks, "And what do you do now, after you are enlightened?" The master smiles and says, "I chop wood and I carry water." The student is confused. What was the point of it all if nothing changed? But everything had changed. Before enlightenment, the master chopped wood while his mind was filled with the usual human turmoil: craving, aversion, worry, regret. He was physically present, but mentally absent. After enlightenment, he just chopped wood. His mind was calm, present, and one with the action. The chores of life remain the same, but our relationship to them is completely transformed. Enlightenment is not an escape from life. It is a total immersion in it. This mindful presence then naturally informs our actions in the world, which is the heart of the practice of right action. This is the understanding that every action we take, no matter how small, has a ripple effect. It is the commitment to live in a way that, as much as possible, does not cause harm to ourselves or to any other living being. This is not about becoming paralyzed by indecision, but about bringing a compassionate inquiry to our choices. In our family life, can we act with more patience toward a child or a partner, even when we are tired? At our workplace, can we choose integrity over corner cutting, cooperation over backstabbing? In our community, can we see how our consumption habits and our treatment of strangers contribute to the wider atmosphere of our society? Right action is the recognition that we are not isolated actors, but threads in a vast, interconnected web. This naturally flows into the practice of right livelihood, which asks us to bring this same quality of mindful and ethical intention to the way we earn our living. In the Buddha's time, this meant avoiding jobs like being a butcher or a weapons dealer. In our complex modern world, the principle remains the same, but its application requires wisdom. The core question is not simply, what is my job, but rather, how do I perform my work, and why? You can practice right livelihood in almost any profession. An artist can create works that uplift the human spirit. A business person can run a company that treats its employees fairly and provides a genuinely useful product or service. A caregiver can offer their presence and kindness as a form of healing. It is about shifting our primary motivation away from simply accumulating wealth or status and toward an intention of service and contribution. It is about finding a way to use our unique skills and talents to reduce suffering and increase well-being in the world, even in a small way. This infuses our work with a sense of meaning and purpose that money alone can never provide. By weaving these practices together, mindfulness in our simple actions, harmlessness in our conduct, and a sense of service in our work, we dissolve the boundary between the sacred and the profane. Our life becomes a seamless whole, a single, unfolding opportunity for practice and awakening. We discover that we do not need to retreat to a cave in the mountains to find peace. The peace we seek is available right here, in the heart of our ordinary, everyday existence. The chopping wood and carrying water of our own lives becomes the very path to our liberation. But let us be clear, this path is not always smooth. In fact, it is precisely in the midst of this everyday practice, when we are engaged with the world, that we often encounter our most powerful inner challenges. A stray comment can trigger a sudden storm of anger. A piece of bad news can unleash a torrent of fear. A memory can bring a wave of profound grief. If our practice is to be resilient, it must be able to handle these powerful emotional energies. How do we apply this calm, present awareness when we are faced with the raw, untamed force of our own inner demons? This leads us to the crucial practice of skillfully and compassionately working with our most difficult emotions. Having learned to find our monastery in the heart of our everyday lives, we must now address the inevitable challenges that arise within its walls. A life of mindful awareness is not a life free from difficulty. On the contrary, as we become quieter and more present, we can become more acutely aware of the inner storms that we previously managed to ignore through distraction and busyness. Suddenly, in the midst of a calm day, a surge of anger can boil up from nowhere. A piece of news can trigger a wave of deep-seated fear. A simple memory can open the floodgates of a grief we thought was long past. These powerful, difficult emotions are our greatest teachers, but only if we learn how to meet them with wisdom and skill. Our habitual way of dealing with these inner demons is deeply ingrained and usually falls into one of two failed strategies. The first is suppression. When a difficult emotion arises, we push it down. We deny it, we numb it, we distract ourselves with work, food, or entertainment. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way, and we try to force the feeling out of our awareness. This is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes an immense and constant expenditure of energy, and the moment our vigilance slips, the emotion erupts to the surface with even greater and more uncontrolled force. Suppressed emotions do not disappear. They fester in the darkness of our psyche, contributing to chronic anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. The second failed strategy is unrestrained expression or indulgence. In this case, we become completely identified with the emotion. We become the anger, lashing out with hurtful words or actions. We become the fear, allowing it to paralyze us and shrink our world. We become the grief, drowning in its depths and believing it is our only reality. While this may provide a momentary sense of release, it is ultimately destructive, causing immense harm to our relationships, our well-being, and the well-being of those around us. Mindfulness offers us a third way, a skillful middle path between the extremes of suppression and indulgence. This is the courageous practice of turning toward our difficult emotions, not to be consumed by them, but to hold them in a spacious and compassionate awareness. It is the art of befriending our demons rather than trying to slay them. This practice can be broken down into a few simple, though not always easy, steps. The first step, when you feel the first stirrings of a powerful emotion, is simply to recognize and acknowledge it. Without judgment, you mentally note what is present. Ah, anger is here. This is the feeling of fear. Grief is arising. This simple act of naming creates an immediate sliver of space. You are no longer lost in the emotion. You are the one who is aware of the emotion. The second step is to allow and accept its presence, just for this moment. Instead of our usual resistance, "I hate feeling this way, it has to go away," we practice a radical acceptance. We give the feeling permission to exist. This does not mean we like the feeling or want it to stay forever. It simply means we are stopping our useless and exhausting war with the reality of this moment. This step alone cuts off the power source for the second arrow of suffering, the self-judgment we pile on top of our original pain. The third, and most grounding, step is to investigate the physical sensations. We gently shift our attention from the mental story about the emotion to the raw, physical energy of the emotion itself. We ask, where do I feel this anger in my body? We explore with a kind of scientific curiosity. Is it a burning heat in my chest, a tightness in my jaw, a clenching in my fists, a churning in my stomach? We are no longer focused on the person or event that made us angry. We are simply being present with the energetic reality of anger as it manifests in our body. This anchors us in the present moment and stops us from feeding the story that keeps the emotion going. The final step is to nurture with kindness. As you stay present with these physical sensations, you can bring a quality of gentleness and care to them. You can imagine your breath flowing into and around the tight or hot places, not to force them to go away, but to give them space. You are holding your own pain with the same tenderness you would use to comfort a frightened child. You are befriending your own experience. There is a powerful story that illustrates this principle perfectly. After his enlightenment, the Buddha was often visited by Mara, a figure who represents the embodiment of temptation, fear, doubt, and all the unskillful states of mind. One day, while the Buddha was meditating, he sensed Mara's presence. An unenlightened being would have done one of two things: tried to fight Mara and drive him away, or tried to run away and hide. The Buddha did neither. He simply opened his eyes, looked toward the figure of Mara, and said calmly, and without fear, "I see you, Mara." In some versions of the story, he goes even further, motioning to an empty seat beside him and saying, "Welcome, I have been expecting you. Would you like some tea?" This is a teaching of profound psychological wisdom. The demon, Mara, thrives on being resisted, feared, and fought. It feeds on our aversion and our struggle. When the Buddha simply acknowledged Mara's presence with calm, non-judgmental awareness, he robbed him of all his power. By offering him a seat, he showed that even the darkest parts of our own minds can be met with hospitality and compassion. Our anger, our fear, our grief, these are our personal Maras. When we fight them, they grow stronger. When we can learn to turn to them and say, "Ah, I see you. Anger, welcome. I will sit with you for a while," they begin to lose their terrifying hold over us. We are no longer their victim. This practice connects directly to the universal law of impermanence. Emotions, no matter how overwhelming they feel, are not solid entities. They are transient weather patterns. They are clouds passing through the sky of our awareness. Like all conditioned phenomena, they arise, they stay for a while, and if we do not keep feeding them with our stories and reactions, they will naturally change and pass away. By sitting with a difficult emotion and watching it as a physical sensation, we get to witness this process directly. We feel the wave of anger build. We feel its peak intensity. And then, if we stay present, we feel it begin to soften, to change, and to eventually dissolve. This direct experience builds an unshakable trust in our own capacity to endure our inner weather without capsizing. To befriend your demons is not to indulge them. It is the opposite. It is to know them so well that they no longer control you from the shadows. It is a path of immense courage, kindness, and freedom. It is the inner resilience that allows us to engage with the world from a place of stability and grace. And this inner stability is essential as we turn to face another of the great challenges of our modern lives, a challenge that comes not as an inner storm, but as a constant, alluring siren song from the world around us. The seductive promise of happiness through the endless accumulation of things. This is the challenge of materialism. Having learned to befriend the inner demons of our difficult emotions, we gain a new level of stability and resilience. With this inner foundation, we are better equipped to face one of the most powerful and pervasive forces in our modern world, a force that promises happiness, but so often delivers only a deeper sense of lack. This is the siren song of materialism, the cultural belief that our well-being can be purchased, that our contentment can be found in the next acquisition. We will now explore this endless pursuit of more and discover the profound Buddhist alternative, the path to finding true abundance within. Our entire consumer society is, in many ways, a perfect external manifestation of the second noble truth. It is a system built upon the institutionalization of tanha, the thirst or craving that the Buddha identified as the root of our suffering. The engine of this system is advertising, and its primary function is to make you feel dissatisfied with your life as it is. It is designed to create a sense of lack, an itch that can only be scratched by a new product. It whispers that you are not attractive enough, not successful enough, not happy enough, but that this new car, this new phone, this new piece of clothing, this new experience will finally fix you, will finally complete the puzzle of your happiness. This is a promise that can never be kept, because it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of where happiness comes from. Psychologists have a name for the trap that this promise creates, the hedonic treadmill. It describes the remarkable human tendency to quickly adapt to new circumstances, both good and bad. Imagine you believe that buying your dream house will make you permanently happy. You work tirelessly, you save, you sacrifice, and you finally achieve your goal. For the first few weeks, or perhaps even months, you are euphoric. The newness is a source of genuine pleasure, but very quickly this heightened state fades. The dream house simply becomes your house. It is the new normal, Your baseline level of happiness returns to more or less where it was before. But now you have a larger mortgage, more rooms to clean, and perhaps you've started noticing that your neighbor's house is even bigger. You are running faster and faster, accumulating more and more, just to stay in the same emotional place. This is the very definition of a futile cycle, a race with no finish line. There is a simple, timeless story that beautifully illustrates the poverty of this more mindset. A wealthy investment banker, on vacation in a small coastal village, was walking on the pier when he saw a fisherman pull up in a small weathered boat. The fisherman had caught a few large, beautiful fish. The banker, impressed, complimented him and asked how long it took to catch them. "Oh, not very long," replied the fisherman. The banker, ever the strategist, asked, "Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" The fisherman explained that he had caught enough to feed his family and share a little with his neighbors. The banker scoffed. "You could be a rich man. Listen, you should fish for more hours every day. With the extra money, you could buy a bigger boat. With a bigger boat, you could catch even more fish and hire a crew. Soon you could own a fleet of boats. You could build your own cannery, control the entire business, and move to the city to run your enterprise." The fisherman listened patiently and then asked, "And then what?" The banker's eyes lit up. "Then, when you've made millions, you can retire. You can move back to a small coastal village like this one, sleep in late, fish a little for fun, play with your children in the afternoon, take a siesta with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings to sip wine and play your guitar with your friends." The fisherman smiled gently, looked at his small boat and the fish that would feed his family, and said softly, "But sir, that is what I am doing right now." This story reveals the profound absurdity of spending our one precious life in a state of constant stress, anxiety, and striving, all to achieve a state of peace and contentment that is already available to us in the simplicity of the present moment. The fisherman, with his small boat and few fish, is the truly wealthy one. His wealth is not measured in currency, but in time, freedom, connection, and contentment. The banker, despite his millions, is the one who is truly poor, impoverished by his insatiable need for more. This leads us to the Buddhist redefinition of wealth. True abundance is not having much. It is needing little. It is the internal treasure of santuthi, or contentment. Contentment is not laziness, apathy, or a lack of desire to improve. It is the liberating and joyful realization that your fundamental well-being is not dependent on external conditions. It is the peace that comes from appreciating what you have, rather than constantly agonizing over what you lack. To cultivate contentment is a radical act of rebellion in a culture designed to make you feel perpetually dissatisfied. It is to look at your life with all its imperfections and to declare, "I have enough. I am enough." This is the emergency brake on the hedonic treadmill. The most direct path to cultivating this state of contentment is the active practice of gratitude. The mind of craving is always focused on the one thing that is missing. The mind of gratitude is focused on the countless blessings that are already present. It is a conscious retraining of our attention. The practice is simple. Each day, perhaps in the morning or before you go to sleep, take a few moments to consciously call to mind 3 or 5 things for which you are genuinely grateful. They do not have to be grand. In fact, the practice is more powerful when they are simple. You might feel gratitude for the warmth of your bed, for the taste of clean water, for the body that allows you to walk and breathe, for a kind word someone shared with you, for the beauty of the sky, for the ability to read these words. This practice is an antidote to taking life for granted. It systematically shifts your perception of the world from one of scarcity and lack to one of profound and ever-present abundance. You begin to see that your life, right now, is a miracle filled with riches you had previously overlooked in your frantic search for something else. This inner work, the cultivation of contentment and gratitude, is the foundation of true wealth. It is a wealth that no one can ever take from you, a peace that is not dependent on the stock market or the opinions of others. And as we practice this, as we loosen the desperate grip of needing external things to validate our sense of self, something remarkable begins to happen. Our sense of being a small, needy, separate self starts to soften. We begin to feel that our well-being is not a private project, but is deeply interwoven with the well-being of everything and everyone around us. This dawning realization of our profound connection to all of life is the next great opening on our path, the wisdom of interconnectedness. Having journeyed inward to find the true source of abundance in contentment and gratitude, we now turn our gaze outward again, but with new eyes. We have deconstructed the illusion of the separate self from the inside, seeing it as a fleeting collection of thoughts and feelings. We will now complete this profound work by seeing how this self is also an illusion from the outside, by exploring one of the most beautiful and transformative teachings of the Buddha, the wisdom of interconnectedness or dependent origination. This is the understanding that nothing, absolutely nothing, exists in isolation. Everything is connected in a vast and intricate web of causality. The principle is elegantly simple. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. This means that every single object, every event, every person, every thought comes into being only because of a web of supporting causes and conditions. Nothing springs into existence on its own. It is a universal law of relationship. To truly grasp this, let us follow the guidance of the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, and meditate on a simple sheet of paper. At first glance, it seems to be a single, separate object, but let us look more deeply. To have this sheet of paper, we must first have a tree. For the tree to grow, it needs water. So the cloud and the rain are in this sheet of paper. The tree also needs sunlight. So the immense, fiery energy of the sun is here in this paper. The tree had to be cut down by a logger. So the logger is in the paper. The logger could not exist without his parents, and his parents without their parents. So generations of human ancestors are present in this paper. The logger needed to eat breakfast to have the strength to work, so the wheat field, the farmer who grew the wheat, and the baker who made the bread are all here in this paper. His axe was made of steel, so the miner who dug the iron ore and the factory worker who forged the tool are also here. The list goes on infinitely. If we were to remove any one of these elements, if we take away the sun, or the cloud, or the logger, or the farmer, this sheet of paper could not exist. So, while it appears to be a separate thing, it is in fact made up entirely of non-paper elements. It is empty of a separate, independent self. Its entire existence is dependent on the existence of the rest of the universe. The whole cosmos has conspired in this moment to bring you this humble sheet of paper. This is the meaning of emptiness in Buddhism. It is not a void or a nothingness. It is the truth that everything is empty of a separate, isolated identity and full of everything else. Now, let us turn this powerful lens of inspection upon ourselves. The being we call I or me is no different from the sheet of paper. We believe we are a separate, independent entity, but a moment's reflection reveals this to be an illusion. My existence right now depends entirely on the air I am breathing, a gift of the trees and the oceans. It depends on the food I have eaten, linking me to farmers, sunlight, and soil. My thoughts are shaped by a language and culture I did not invent. My beliefs and opinions are conditioned by the teachers I've had, the books I've read, and the experiences I've undergone. My very body is a temporary collection of elements, borrowed from the earth, which will one day be returned to it. If you take away all these non-me elements, the food, the air, the culture, the people, the planet, what is left of me? Nothing. The separate self dissolves under this inquiry, revealing itself to be a nexus point, a temporary and beautiful knot in the infinite web of life. We do not just coexist, we interare. There is a magnificent image from ancient Indian philosophy that captures this truth on a cosmic scale. It is the vision of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, limitless net that stretches across the entire universe, expanding infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly clear, multifaceted jewel. The miraculous nature of this net is that if you look at the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see all the other countless jewels in the net reflected within it. And if you look even more closely at any of those tiny reflections, you will see that each one also contains the reflection of all the other jewels, and so on, into infinity. Each of us is one of those jewels. Our identity is not contained solely within ourselves, but is made up of the reflections of every other being, every other event, every other particle in the universe. In turn, our actions, our words, and our very presence are reflected in every other jewel. To touch one jewel is to cause the entire net to tremble and shimmer. There is no such thing as a truly isolated action. Our lives are a process of infinite, mutual reflection and co-creation. This is not just an abstract piece of philosophy. It is a truth that has the power to fundamentally transform our lives and our world. When we truly feel our interconnectedness, it becomes the natural and unshakable foundation for ethics and compassion. The illusion of being a separate self is what allows us to harm others. We can hurt someone else because we believe their suffering is over there and our happiness is over here. But if we are all jewels in the same net, to harm another is to dull our own reflection. To cause another to suffer is, in a very real sense, to cause ourselves to suffer. When this is understood in the heart, not just the head, boundless compassion arises effortlessly. The wish for all beings to be happy and free from suffering becomes the most logical and natural motivation for our lives. This wisdom is also the most profound ecological teaching we have. Our modern crisis of environmental destruction is born from the illusion that nature is a separate thing for us to use and exploit. We see the forest, the river, the ocean, and the atmosphere as resources out there, separate from us. The wisdom of interbeing reveals this to be a suicidal delusion. We are not separate from the earth, we are the earth. The air we pollute is the air we must breathe. The water we poison is the water we must drink. Harming the planet is a direct act of self-harm. A deep respect and reverence for all of life becomes the only sane way to live. To awaken to this truth is to be healed from the deepest wound of the human condition, the ache of loneliness, of feeling like a small, separate fragment in a vast, indifferent universe. In the light of interconnectedness, this feeling of alienation dissolves. We see that we are not a lonely wave, but the entire ocean expressing itself for a moment as a wave. We are not a separate jewel, but the entire, shimmering, miraculous net of Indra. Having journeyed from the intensely personal diagnosis of our own suffering through the practical methods of training the mind and arriving at this vast, cosmic vision of our unity with all things, we are ready for the final stage of our exploration. What does a person who has integrated all of these truths look like? How do they walk through the world, holding both the intimate reality of their own experience and the vast reality of their interconnectedness? This leads us to the portrait of the awakened one in the modern world, the peaceful warrior. We have now reached the culmination of our long and deep journey. We have traveled from the dark, restless office of the modern mind, through the murky waters of the past, and the dense fog of the future. We have sat with the great physician and received his diagnosis of our fundamental dis-ease. We have uncovered its cause in the fires of our own craving, and we have glimpsed the profound truths of reality, that everything changes, and that our sense of being a separate self is a beautiful illusion. We have been given the promise of a cure, a peace that surpasses all understanding, and we have been handed the map to that cure, the noble eightfold path. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the present, to observe our minds with kindness, to let go, and to cultivate a heart of boundless compassion. Now, we bring all these threads together to paint a portrait of the person we can become. This is the vision of the peaceful warrior. The name may seem like a contradiction, but it is not. The warrior on this path does not wage war on others. Their armor is not made of steel, but of patience. Their sword is not for cutting down enemies, but for cutting through their own delusions. Their battlefield is the internal landscape of their own mind, and their victory is not over another person, but over the inner tyrants of greed, aversion, and ignorance. This warrior's defining characteristic is a profound and unshakable peace, a peace that is not a fragile absence of conflict, but a deep, resilient strength born of wisdom. Their courage is the quiet courage to be present with whatever life offers, to meet their own demons with kindness, and to keep their heart open in a world that so often encourages us to be closed. This awakened life is not one of passive detachment. The peaceful warrior is not indifferent to the suffering of the world. A common misunderstanding of non-attachment is that it means not caring. In fact, the opposite is true. True non-clinging frees us to care more deeply and effectively. Seeing the interconnectedness of all life, the peaceful warrior is moved by a powerful compassion to act, but their action is different. It is not fueled by the fire of anger, the ego of self-righteousness, or the bitterness of blame, all of which only add more conflict to the world. Instead, they act from a place of profound clarity and love. They become the calm eye in the center of the storm, a force for healing and reconciliation in their families, their communities, and the world. This is the heart of engaged spirituality, not an escape from life, but a total, wise, and loving engagement with it. This does not mean that the peaceful warrior's life is free from challenges. The waves of the world still roll in. There will still be moments of gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, sickness and health. The law of impermanence does not cease to operate. The crucial difference is that the peaceful warrior has learned how to surf. Before, we were like non-swimmers, caught in the undertow, thrashed about and drowned by every wave. Through the practice of mindfulness and the cultivation of wisdom, we have developed balance. We have an inner center of gravity that is no longer dependent on external conditions. We have built an inner refuge, a sanctuary of peace within our own hearts that remains untouched by the chaos of the world. We can now ride the waves of life with a sense of skill, grace, and even joy, understanding their transient nature and trusting in our ability to remain balanced. The most perfect symbol for this entire journey and its culmination is the lotus flower. The lotus begins its life down in the darkness, its roots buried deep in the thick, murky mud at the bottom of a pond. This mud represents the reality of our ordinary lives, the dukkha, the confusion, the pain, the emotional turmoil. The path of awakening does not ask us to deny or escape this mud. In fact, it teaches us to see that the mud itself is the necessary nutrient for our growth. The lotus stem then grows up through the murky water, navigating its way toward the light. This represents our practice, the cultivation of the Eightfold Path in the midst of our complex lives. Finally, the lotus bud emerges into the clean air and the open sunlight, and it blossoms into a flower of breathtaking beauty and purity. The most miraculous quality of the lotus is that, Though it has grown up through all that mud and dirty water, its petals remain completely clean, radiant, and unstained. We are the lotus. Our suffering is the mud, the path is the stem, and the awakened heart of the peaceful warrior is the unstained blossom. To live this way is to live in the world, but not be owned by it. It is to be fully engaged with life, yet unsoiled by its greed, its hatred, and its confusion. It is the alchemical miracle of transforming the very stuff of our suffering into the substance of our liberation. A person living this truth walks through the world with a new sense of purpose. It is no longer the frantic, ego-driven project of trying to accumulate more wealth, more status, more pleasure. The purpose becomes simpler, deeper, and far more satisfying. It is to alleviate suffering and cultivate happiness in ourselves and in all the beings we encounter, moment by moment. This is not a heavy burden, but a joyful expression of our true nature. They have found true abundance, not in the size of their bank account, but in the spaciousness of their heart. They have discovered a peace that cannot be bought, and a freedom that cannot be taken away. They are a refuge for themselves, and by the simple power of their presence, they become a source of peace for the entire world. This portrait of the peaceful warrior is not an image of a faraway saint or an impossible, superhuman ideal. It is a reflection of the innate potential that lies dormant within every one of us. It is the fully blossomed expression of our own deepest nature. Having now surveyed the entire path, from the diagnosis of our dis-ease to this inspiring vision of our potential, we can now step back and gather the essential wisdom of this journey, preparing to carry it forward into the living reality of our own lives. We began our journey together in a quiet, dimly lit room, with a figure trapped in the prison of their own mind, a mind haunted by the ghosts of yesterday and terrified by the shadows of tomorrow. This figure is a reflection of us all, in those moments when we feel lost, overwhelmed, and disconnected from our own lives. From that place of suffering, we embarked on an exploration, a journey inward, guided by an ancient and profound wisdom. We learned to see the restless river of our own thoughts and to recognize that we did not have to be swept away by its current. We received the great physician's courageous diagnosis, naming the pervasive dis-ease of our lives, dukkha. We found its source not in the world around us, but in the inner thirst and clinging of our own heart. We saw why this clinging was a futile strategy when we confronted the universal law of impermanence, and how even the solid self we seek to protect is just an ever-changing process, as empty and wondrous as a reflection in a jewel. But we were not left in a place of emptiness. We were given a promise of a cure, the peace of nirvana, the extinguishing of the fires of suffering. And we were given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a beautiful and comprehensive guide to living a life of integrity, mental clarity, and profound wisdom. We learned to anchor ourselves in the present with the breath, to observe our inner world with kindness, to let go of the past, and to cultivate a heart of boundless compassion, allowing the unstained lotus of our true nature to rise from the mud of our confusion. If there is one essential truth to carry forward from this entire journey, it is this: peace is not a destination you must travel to. It is not a prize to be won after a long struggle. It is an inner capacity, a sanctuary that you can build and access right now, in the heart of your own being. The only place you can ever find this peace is in the only place life ever truly happens, this present moment. The past is a memory. The future is a dream. Only the here and now is real. This moment is your only true home. This journey of 1,000 miles does not require a grand gesture or a monumental effort. It begins with a single, simple step. It begins with the intention to be just a little more present, a little more kind to yourself, a little more aware. You have the map, You have the tools. You have the anchor of your own breath, your constant and faithful companion. The path is not in front of you. It is beneath your feet, in this very moment. You have everything you need to begin. So, just for now, let go of all that you have learned. Let go of all the concepts and ideas. Simply come back to the beginning. Come back to the quiet room of your own body. Feel the gentle rhythm of your life, rising and falling. The journey starts now. Breathe.